down here in Oroville? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah? The cock hunter? Oh, yeah. You sure? Yep. My dad had a sport gun. Did a good nice job. Yeah.
This pen weighs more than she does. I've never seen such a small. I mean, I've just never seen a small before.
I've got an endocrinologist over in Chico. She is the tiniest thing ever. I didn't know how she had kids. I don't know. She has. Your kids are better than she is.
I don't know what I guess.
Welcome to the Oroville City Council meeting, March 19th, 2019. We are reconvening from closed session where direction was given and no action was taken. Will you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
I'll second that.
Oh, sorry.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to presentations and proclamations. We have the Elijah House to give. Oh, you want to? Okay. We have Ruth for OpenGov financial presentation.
Can you put your...
We have a presentation tonight from OpenGov. This is something that the city has been participating in for years on it, annually updating our financial statements, but recently we have updated everything on a monthly basis. So this is our attempt at doing a relaunch so that it comes be familiar with the citizens, and it's a transparency portal where everybody can look up our financial information. And so we have Meredith and Andrew on the line to give you a presentation tonight.
Hey everyone, this is Meredith calling from OpenGov. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I serve as Oroville's Customer Success Manager, so I am your main point of contact at OpenGov. And what I'm going to do today is run through on the screen. We have a general fund summary story that we have built off of the city's data. So as you may be familiar, OpenGov is a software company. We are built entirely for government. So you might hear OpenGov and think government transparency or financial transparency, and that is really core to our mission. But we also are interested in the whole kind of world of citizen engagement as well. And so utilizing the story that you see on the screen today is a great way for citizens, for council, for staff to be able to have a little bit more context and narrative around the financial data for the city. So what I'm going to run through is the story that I have on the screen, and throughout my clicking through the story, I'll take you directly to the city's OpenGov transparency site. So everything that you're looking at today is the city's actual financial data. To Ruth's point, we've also included monthly data in here. So this information is going to be fresh. It is, the city's information, and everything that I look at today is available on the city's OpenGov transparency site. So nothing that I'm doing is internal. It's all public facing and can be done by anyone, in the audience today. If you have any questions as I move through, please feel free to interject. But if not, I'll go ahead and get started. So we have on the screen a general fund summary. So this is almost like a web page that we've built to provide some background on the general fund for the city of Oroville and how the general fund is working in the day-to-day finances of the city. So visiting the story will give you some background on what exactly the general fund is. I'm sure not everyone in the audience is as well versed with multi-fund accounting as maybe Ruth is or others, and I know that I still am learning multi-fund accounting every day, but what we're doing here is outlining a little bit about what is the general fund and how does that really support the city services. What you'll see is as I move through the story and click around the different pie graphs, I'll be able to see what the 2019 budget, how that is comprised in the different departments. So I can see 64% of the 2019 general fund budget is going towards public safety. We see that Public Works is receiving about 9.3% of that as well. So this is going to be an interactive tile that you can use to explore the data further. I'm going to continue to scroll down, and now you'll see that we have these two speedometers on the screen. These speedometers or gauges are actually showing me monthly data for fiscal year 2019. So that is information from July 1 of 2018 through February of 2019, since the city operates on a July 1 fiscal start. So we're able to see the expenses, and I can even zoom in a little bit on this to show you that I can see what the expenses for the city and the general fund are, as well as the revenues, and compare those side by side. Just like in the tile above, this is going to be interactive. So if I click into this tile here, this is going to take me to the city's OpenGov transparency site, and I'll be able to dig into the details a little bit further. So a moment ago, I was looking at expenses across the city for the general fund, and now I'm able to see the details that make up all those expenses. And this is being broken out by the expense type. So I can see what is being spent on salaries and benefits, services and supplies, and transfers, and comparing that to the annual budget, which we see here on the far right-hand side. So on the screen right now, we're looking at monthly data. We're looking at this month over month and then cumulative amounts. This is often called like a budget to actual report. So I'm able to see the build up each month of our expenses, and I'm comparing that to that annual budget, which has the shade to it on the right-hand side. If I'm interested in digging into this data a little bit further, I can use any part of the graph to drill into it. So if I want to isolate just the salaries and benefits expenses for 2019, I can click into salaries and benefits, and now I'm able to see all of the expenses that roll up into salaries and benefits. So we can see that that's salaries and wages, overtime, health insurance, etc. I can continue this behavior of doing the drill down by clicking into any part of the legend here, into the words, or I can click into a different color on the graph that corresponds to the legend on the right. So perhaps I want to dive into overtime expenses. I can click into the purple overtime and now see what has been spent by the city for overtime expenses in fiscal year 2019. As this graph has been updating, I also have a table of data that's updating below and has those raw numbers. So I'm able to see the dollar values as well as see the visual representation above. So you might see this report and think, okay, that's great to know what our overtime expenses for the city are, but I really want to understand what department does this come out of. So I can come over here on the left-hand side of the filter panel, and rather than look at expenses by expense type, I can switch this to be by budget unit, not department. And I can see, not surprising, that public safety accounts for the majority of the overtime expenses that we have at the city. And just like how I was digging into the salary and wages data, I can dig into public safety and click into that and isolate fire, police, or this municipal law enforcement. So again, the story itself is showing us that summary information. I can see, again, if I click back to the story, that $8.4 million has been spent in the general fund, and clicking into it is what allows me to go directly to that transparency site and really get into the details. I'll pause there before I jump to revenues. Any questions on what I've gone over so far?
Is this currently live?
Yes. Would you like to ask a question?
No,
No.
that was
Okay,
the
we're ready
question.
for
So this is current, active now.
Yes.
I'm just trying to follow along, and I'm not getting the same thing. That's all.
Oh, we're sharing her computer screen.
So
she's-
this is a different view than what's actually live on the internet.
No, this is live on the internet, but she's showing a story that she created. But the
Okay,
data
I understand.
on our internet is exactly the same
Okay. That's why I was
Yep,
having trouble
exactly.
following.
on our website, not on the internet. Okay.
Great. So similar to how we evaluated the expenses, I can click into revenues, and this will take me again to the transparency site. And you'll notice that when I click into that tile, I'm taken to the view here that shows me that I'm looking at FY19 budget to actual revenues. So if anyone is following along, I'm looking in the current year month-over-month report, and I'm looking at the FY19 budget to actual revenues, which is the last view over here on the left panel. So I'm able to isolate taxes, licenses and permits, charges for services, etc. So if I click into taxes, I'm sure most people know that we don't always receive property taxes, every single month. And so maybe I want to understand, when property taxes are being brought in. So I can isolate a specific type of tax, RDA residual, and rather than look at this data month over month, I might want to know, when exactly does the city receive property taxes, that revenue? So I can come down here to presentation, and then I go into monthly report options, and I change this from month over month cumulative to be incremental. And now I'm able to see, July and January is when the city receives those property tax revenue. So that's another great way to use this report, is to look at data incrementally as well as that cumulative buildup. So in the example we used earlier with the police overtime or public safety overtime, that could be an interesting way to see what months our overtime expense is the highest. Maybe the summer months, maybe around the holidays. That's a good way to be able to find some trends. Great, I'll jump back to the story, but before I do that, I'll also call out that on the left-hand side where my cursor is, under the City of Oroville logo, we have the reports, and then we have stories. And if you click into General Fund Summary, you'll be taken to the same screen that I'm on. Okay, so I'll scroll down a bit further, and you also can see that we can look at these totals in annual amounts as well, rather than looking at it monthly. So if I want to click into the annual expenses, again, this is going to jump me into the public-facing site as well. And then scrolling down a little bit further, we have embedded an overview of how to use OpenGov as well. So I will press play, and I don't know if you can hear my computer screen, but let me turn that off. Okay, well, hopefully everyone is awake now. But if you go to that story, that's a video of my voice going through these OpenGov transparency sites that we have for one of our more standard sites. So you can follow along the 6-minute video to get a better understanding as to how to navigate and flip through the different filters on the report. And then at the bottom of the story, we have some contact information for the finance department. So again, everything on this story itself, as well as the transparency site, can be accessed by the public. If you're on the OpenGov transparency site right now and poking around, every action that you take is going to be reset when someone else comes to the site. So no one's going to see what you're doing. You won't break it. And I definitely encourage you to get onto the site and to play around. If you have any questions as you're going through the data, you can click the help button. Oops, I clicked login. Sorry about that. You can click the help button and contact Oroville and submit a question or feedback that you have on the site directly to the city. You also, if you find a data point or you find some of this information interesting, you can share this with others by downloading the graph as an image or the spreadsheet of data. You also can share this link with your neighbors or anyone else The link that you're seeing at the top of the screen, although long and scary, is a live link, and so you can share this with others, and they'll be taken to the exact same screen that you're looking at. These reports will be updated on a regular basis with fresh monthly data as well. So that is kind of the update of OpenGov at the city. We will continue to bolster these reports and take feedback on what top questions are or data that you want to see. So that is OpenGov at Oroville in a nutshell. Are there any other questions that have popped up?
Yes, I see a question.
Could you open, what is the young lady's name?
Meredith.
Meredith. Could you open up the stats for, I wanted to see what overtime looks like in the month of November 2018 during the campfire incident for fire and police.
Sure, I can definitely do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to click into the filter panel, and I'm going to have this look at expenses, and I'm going to come down here, and this is our filter panel here. So if I expand this, I'm actually going to be able to see all of the kind of like the chart of accounts that we built in for the city. So I want to look at expenses.
Meredith,
yep.
We're not seeing. Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh.
Thank you.
It stalled out when we weren't seeing what you were doing, but we caught up. Okay.
Okay. Great.
Sorry.
So just as a reminder, I went to the filter panel here. I clicked expand, and now I'm able to see the funds, the budget units, and the type of expenses. So I'll go into salaries and benefits, and this is really an easy thing for me to do. So I can just isolate overtime, and then I'll say, okay, I want to go down to public safety. And was the question for fire? Is that correct?
For fire and police, please.
Great. So then
for November 2018.
Perfect. I'll click into public safety. I'll remove the municipal law enforcement. And now I'm just looking at fire and police. I'm going to click out of the filter panel. And I'm going to go ahead and jump from, so then I can see right here, November 2018. And if I scroll, I'll change this to budget unit. So now I can see the breakout of police and fire. And I'll move this to be November. So I can compare this data by looking at it in this pie graph here, or if it's more impactful for me to see it month over month, I could switch this back to be a bar graph or any other type of graph. And I can scroll below and see the actual dollar value here. So we're looking at
65,905 for police, fire. Okay, and the cumulative is 84,853.
So that is the two departments combined for November. Right now we're looking at this incrementally, but I can switch it to be cumulative if you want to see the cumulative buildup. But that is the total for the month of November.
Thank you very much, Meredith.
You're welcome. And I don't know if this is something that also might be interesting, is to say, okay, so in November of 18-19, we had these higher expenses as well as in December. What I maybe want to do is compare those November expenses in 2018 to Novembers of in the past. So in that case, what I would do is go to presentation, and rather than month over month, I could switch this to be year over year, and then I can look at this data through November. Oh, and I guess we only have
Meredith, before we move too far ahead, we have a question by Councilmember Pittman.
Sure.
I totally get this, and I'm totally supportive of it, but I'm looking at a lot of faces in the audience, and they're a little bit overwhelmed to say that. And I appreciate your video to present and show how to do it, but unless you're an Excel expert or spreadsheet expert, it gets to be a lot of information. And I'm wondering, after you've launched this with an agency, have you seen the need, or have you had like a particular session with the public to help share how they can access this information? I'm just thinking down the line that it might be nice to have a separate, open.gov meeting with the folks in the room here, that they could actually play with it and understand it versus just your presentation tonight. Has that been done in the past?
been done in the past. I have had some like citizen workshops that I've helped host before, so I'd be happy to help, to help out with that in the future, definitely. And I understand it can be a little bit overwhelming, and I spend the majority of my life in here, so I click around a lot. So would be open to having a session. And I also have some other resources that I can provide to Ruth to share, and we can put on the city website that are like screenshots and have arrows that point to some of the key features of the reports as well. So that's available for use as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that idea.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I just want to add, I think that's a great idea. I'm pretty savvy, and I was having trouble keeping up. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Meredith.
You're welcome. So get out there and play around. That's the best way to learn, I'd say. And I look forward to coming out to Oroville and hopefully having that session soon. Hope everyone has a great rest of their evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah.
Okay, back to work program. Elijah House presentation, please.
I don't think it's on, so make sure you turn it on. Side.
There you go.
Well, good evening, Mayor, City Council. Thank you so much for allowing us to come and present the Back to Work program to you tonight. I don't know if we're going to be as elaborate as the last presentation, but hopefully it's just as exciting for everybody. Before we get into Back to Work, I want to just give a little bit of background on who we are as Elijah House. So I actually want to invite our CEO, Joe Henderson, up to speak.
Thank you, members. I appreciate the time. I know I have 2 minutes. We chopped this meeting into pieces, so a lot of people here might know what the Elijah House is and maybe a little bit of what it does. We are a domestic nonprofit that's based here out of Oroville. We started in 2015. We incorporated in 2016. We started real small, and we kind of looked at all the different social services that are offered in the area. And very quickly found out that a lot of them were very poor. We felt that we ought to be doing something better, and we ought to be offering some good services to the folks that live here in Oroville. So we did that. Today we have 11 different sites. We do multiple different services, such as mental health services. You could probably switch to the next slide. So primarily what we do is a term called residential treatment. This is an inpatient drug and alcohol treatment facility. Guys or females in other facilities would come into here if they have a substance use disorder, and they would receive intensive drug and alcohol treatment for approximately 90 to 180 days. The model, the perfect model, is really individuals who come here. They receive every item that they need to live a happy, healthy life. So that might be the criminal thinking, or if they're not justice involved, whatever that looks like. Of course, an assessment would be done. They would receive parenting classes, anger management classes if that's what they needed, and then general case management, really to just get all of the things that they need in order. After they graduate, they would be stepped down to a sober living home. Sober living houses are just that. They're homes for individuals who are committed to living a clean and sober life. All these houses that we operate have video and audio monitoring. They're fully staffed with case managers and resident supervisors who live inside. And then, of course, we offer transportation to any of the major business personal needs that the individual has. And then in a perfect model, if the individual is in sober living, they would also receive social services at our outpatient clinic. Again, that could be drug and alcohol counseling. That could be individual group sessions, relationship counseling, family therapy, anything like that. We, in July, are opening up a wellness center here in Oroville. The wellness center is going to offer legal services. It's going to offer drug and alcohol counseling, mental health services. It's going to offer transportation for anybody who needs rides to medical appointments or whatnot. And then cooking classes, domestic violence intervention program, all kinds of stuff. Everyone one would need to live well. That's going to be offered at our clinic in July. It's going to be free to the community. And then, of course, our employment development programs. We have partnered with the Butte County Office of Ed, which we're going to bring up here in a second. And we do a program called Back to Work. And that's the purpose of this meeting. The Back to Work program is a fantastic opportunity for individuals with employment barriers. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But I just wanted to give a general idea of what the Elijah House is about and what it offers. And it does a lot more than a lot of people think. So with that, I'm going to bring up Travis. He is the statewide coordinator for Butte County Office of Education.
Thank you for having me tonight. As Joe said, I'm the statewide coordinator for the Back to Work department with Butte County Office of Education. So the Back to Work department is about getting people back to work. That's our main goal. We offer a transitional employment program. We are contracted with Caltrans. Well, we have multiple contracts with Caltrans and then another one through CDCR, helping out individuals to overcome barriers to get into employment. We are a statewide program, and I'm happy to say that we finally have a program locally here in Butte as of November last year, and it's based here in Oroville, and I'm proud to have that here in my hometown county. So it's been a statewide program. We have 33 crews throughout California. We have one crew here. So, and we just finally got that crew here in November. That we've been the public agency administrating the contract throughout the state since 2013. We've increased significantly since then. In 2013, it was a direct contract with CDCR through Caltrans. And then to Butte County Office of Education, 9 crews throughout the state, 4 different locations. Then we created a contract directly with Caltrans, opening up a veterans outreach program in 4 different locations. And since then, the need is significant in all areas. Caltrans really directs our locations on trash scores. So here in Butte County, we have a lot less trash than LA. In San Diego, Sacramento, Fresno, all our other locations, Bay Area. But being the public agency, we finally got one up here in Butte. And so our main goal is being a stepping stone. We have an end date to our employment program. Like I said, it's transition. So they get 6 months of employment. There is an end date. So we try to get those individuals in a career mindset, not a job mindset, just over broke. We don't want that. We want careers. We've got people with significant barriers throughout the state working in careers, have state employment, and have gone off to doing bigger and better things. People that have been living on the streets, had nowhere, no vision, and now they're out there working for the state, working in other capacities with other agencies that we partner with. The main thing is being that stepping stone. Success looks different for every individual. If it's feeding their kids for the night, so be it, but we try to get them in that career mindset throughout our program, and getting them to work on the highways, cleaning our communities, and then being able to be productive citizens in the communities and end up getting a career to help support their families. I always say CCC, Challenge, Change, and Create, and that's something that we push throughout the whole state for everybody in our crews. You challenge yourself in a positive way, you're going to change yourself in a positive way, and you're going to end up creating endless opportunities for yourself. So that's the Back to Work program. With that, I would like to introduce John. So he's our program manager through the Elijah House, who we partner here with in Butte County.
Awesome. As I said, I'm the program manager for the Back to Work program. Many of you know me in my other roles, but I've been really excited to be able to take on this project. It's really done some great things just since November, and just to get a little overview of what we're doing here, a little bit about our steps to success. We have a referral program. We partner with agencies such as Parole, Probation, Alliance for Workforce Development, BCBC. Also online, people can apply, and then we also bring people on through our in-house. We bring them on for interviews. We do one-on-one interviews. We assess their need for the program as well as their potential for success within the program. And it really is an interesting process because sometimes the person that nobody else would hire is exactly the person that we're looking for, right? Which is exactly the great thing about this program. Then we provide training for them. Initially, they have a safety training that they can go through. Through our partnership with BCOE in the beginning, when we launched the program, we were able to put 25 of our participants through a OSHA 10 training program, which was absolutely amazing. And then we also do a quarterly safety training as well. Then we place them on the crew. We were able to start with about 12 people in the program. The crew runs 8 people per day plus a crew supervisor. But we have about 12 people in the program because they only work 3 to 4 days per week so that they can spend the other days doing training, education, as well as any other program needs that they may have. And then we do assessments on everyone that comes in the program, a substance abuse assessment, a job skills assessment, and ongoing assessments through the time. I would like to say that this is more than a job. The wonderful thing is it is a job. It's a job that's putting money in the pockets of people that were broke a lot of times. And so that's a great thing, but it's more than a job. It provides experience, training, education, wraparound services, as well as job placement assistance. Experience is all on hand. They're out there in the field actually working all the time. You can see the pictures there with some Gold Country Casino in the background. They're right out here on Highway 162 a few weeks ago, cleaning up Oroville, which is great. And you can see some of them in the audience here today as well. Just been doing a great job. I get nothing but compliments from Caltrans. They're blown away by the amount of garbage that they're actually picking up out there on a daily basis, which is really good to hear. So a lot of this is just hands-on experience. Some of these guys, it's the first job that they've ever had legally outside of prison. Some just have no real-world job experience. So for some, this is a huge blessing because they're learning on the job. They're learning how to just show up for work, how to be there on time, how to dress for work, how to be a part of a crew, be a part of a team, just those team building skills that are involved in it. And we've seen a lot of growth through them just through the hands-on portion of it. But we also provide training to them. As I said, OSHA 10 has been part of it. HAZWOPER 40 has been really huge right now with the Camp Fire disaster. It's a huge tragedy, but it's opened up a door for employment for a lot of people. But to work up there, you have to have the HAZWOPER 40. It's about a $400 to $600 class, depending on what all is offered in that class. And through our partnerships, we've been able to provide that for free to many of our participants, which has been an absolutely wonderful thing, as well as CPR, hazardous communications, and driving. I got a picture up there of Anthony Rodriguez. He couldn't make it tonight. He had a family thing, but this is his first job outside of prison. Never had a driver's license in his life. There in his raincoat, he's holding up his permit, and they're sitting in his vehicle. He actually has his driver's license that he just got on Friday, which is really good. And then you can see down below as well, that was one of our HAZWOPER 40 trainings. Education as well. If they don't have GEDs coming in the program, we try to get them plugged in to get GEDs. Some of them have no computer skills whatsoever, don't even know how to turn on a computer. So even just some basic computer skills for them are great. Interview skills, some life skills just to how to navigate through life. And of course, now that they're making money, we want to try and teach them to be good stewards of their money and to budget their finances as well. But being a part of this program at Elijah House, we offer wraparound services to them, which is the beauty of the program. Anything that we do in-house as Elijah House, we offer to anyone coming through the program, whether they are clients of Elijah House or if they're being referred through other agencies to be a part of the Back to Work program, as far as counseling, group sessions, one-on-one, some coaching, job opportunities. As well, we've also been able to offer a couple of them residency because they didn't have any place to live, which was a wonderful thing. And then job placement assistance, of course, he said this is transitional. It's geared to be about 90 working days, about 6 months. And in that time, we try to move them through the program and get them jobs. We've been able to get some of them already from full-time employment, which is an excellent thing. Some of which through local businesses right here within our community that have been able to hire some of these guys on. They use us as a referral, knowing that we're training them, we're walking them through the process, and we're continuing to give them the support that they need down the road to remain successful in their jobs. Local employers have been great to us in that. Also with the 185 laborers unions, we were able to send some people down for that to do assessments and join the unions. And again, through the partnerships that we have, we've been able to provide payment for their union dues upon acceptance into the union, which is huge because those run several $100s. And then of course with Caltrans, the beauty is we work side by side with Caltrans a lot of the times right out there on the highway. So it's kind of like an on-the-job interview. And last week we were able to put 4 of them through a application process with Caltrans, and they were all able to apply for different jobs within Caltrans. But they've already been doing kind of on-the-job interview process, which is great. And through the crews that run throughout the state, Caltrans has hired people directly on to their maintenance programs, which has been wonderful. And just a little bit about seeing the potential about this program here in Oroville. We're really looking to partner with the city in various ways through community service, park cleanups, helping clean up some homeless camps even. We know that those can be very tricky. Our guys do have a lot of training though. Of course, you know, CHP or police or whoever usually go in, make sure that it's not too hazardous, but they are trained to go in and even how to pick up needles and things along those lines as well. A lot of the alleys and streets within the community, as we all know, can really use some work. But we are looking to do some community service, even on Saturdays, to provide our work crew, the van, the trailer, the tools, and just go out and be a part of the community and help clean some things up. We're really looking to provide jobs for our community, but as well some life transformation. We know that in a community such as ours, where jobs are hard to come by, those without the skills necessary to get jobs, they usually turn to a life of crime or drugs or whatever else. And so being able to get them employed is a great step, but we also want to teach them how to really change their life and become productive members of society. And we're really looking to do this together. So right now we do partner and we contract through BCOE with Caltrans, but we just wanted to kind of pitch it out there to you guys as well. We'd be really looking to see this program excel, and would be willing to see what the future could hold for the Back to Work program here in Oroville as well. So thank you guys so much for your time tonight, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, John.
Any questions?
Well, I can personally attest to your program. I've been hiring your clients for a couple of years, Joe. And I'll tell you what, you guys run a tight ship, and you really produce people that are not only are they do they have a good performance at work, but they have a good attitude. You are creating victors, not victims. And I really appreciate your contribution to the community.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, I certainly support everything you've said, and I've heard good things. I have a business owner here that has a letter in front of me tonight that says there's 19 homeless between a certain part of town. How do we get those 19 homeless into your program?
Well, first off, to get them in the program right now, we need more crews, and that's just a reality of it. I wish that we had more crews. We're really working on that through our BCOE, but that's one of the reasons why we're presenting that here tonight. I have way more applications than I have openings in the program right now. But to get them in, really, they would just need to apply, and through that process, even we recognize that some of them come in and they're still addicted to drugs. When you're living on the streets, it's hard to get clean. So we try to even get them through that initial process. If we can provide them some sort of drug treatment, substance abuse treatment, get them some residency, help get them cleaned up, that's a great stepping stone to get them into the program. But we do work with people who literally coming off the streets and coming in looking for jobs. I was actually able to hire one of them on last week, and he's been staying in the Oroville Rescue Mission now, which is a great thing. But now he's employed and hopefully on the path to a better life. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, thank you, John.
Yeah,
really
thank you.
appreciate it, Joe.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, number 3, Business Assistance Housing Department presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Amy Bergstrand, and I manage the Business Assistance and Housing Development Department. I've been with the city for going on 15 years. I'm going to give you a little bit of overview of what we do in our department, and I have to do this. See if I can do it. Okay. Business Assistance, Rick Farley actually oversees that portion, and he will be giving a presentation at a later date. We do housing development, community development, public services. We do housing and economic development, loan portfolio management, and all of these things I'll explain in a little more detail. I do a lot of grant writing and grant administration. We oversee the compliance of Senate Bill 341 as it pertains to housing assets, and also Senate Bill 35, which is a new law which is regarding the housing element compliance. Under housing development, that includes the home ownership program, affordable multifamily and senior housing development, our housing rehabilitation programs, and minor home repair grants. We have an Oroville Safety Mortgage Assistant Program, a lease to purchase program, and we also do in-house home buyer workshops where we teach people how to budget for home ownership and also credit, how to improve credit. And then we also, a main part is our loan portfolio management. The home ownership program has been really successful here in Oroville. Over the past 10 years, we have done over 211 loans, and that has been for approximately $13 million, over $13 million in loans. And then all of these are non-general fund, so that's community development block grant, home, Cal Home, and redevelopment agency funding. Also program income, and that's money that comes off from the payment of loans. We reloan them out for additional funding. Currently our program, we are doing loans up to $100,000 or 45% of the purchase price. We have done that almost the entire time that I've been employed with the city. Last year we lowered it to $75,000 because we were actually going through money quite quickly. But we've just recently, last meeting, asked to increase it again because of the campfire. We are having trouble meeting the requirements, and our applicants are not able to find any home in their price range. Also, in the past 10 years, we've received more than $7 million back in loan payments, where we've been able to purchase fire trucks, do additional loans, and do a lot of other community development. Our department also develops multifamily units. Currently, we've done about 341 units in the city of Oroville. We partnershiped with Butte County Housing Authority for 50 units. The Oroville Manor is 72 units. Hillview Ridge 1 was 72. Hillview Ridge 2 was 57. The Orange Tree Senior Apartments were 49 units, and we're currently working on the Sierra Heights Senior Apartments, and that's 41 units, and we're hoping to start construction in May. And the estimated time to develop that is 10 months, give or take. So we're hoping by the end of the year we might have some units for some seniors. All of these homes are for our affordable housing, so they're for 80% or less of area median income. Some of them are in the 50 to 60% range of area median income, and some of them are below 30%. We also have an owner-occupied rehabilitation program, and this is a low-interest loan for homeowners to make repairs to their house, their health and safety repairs, code repairs, anything that's, and there are some other repairs as long as they are identifying all the health and safety as well. We've done 22 in the past 10 years of about $800,000. We're currently finishing up on one too. There's been a big stall in that program when the housing market crashed. No one had equity because we require there to be enough equity in the home. So it's been a slow start getting those back going. We also created an Oroville Safety Mortgage Assistance Program, and this is used as a recruitment tool to try to retain our safety officers. It's a $25,000 mortgage subsidy for them to purchase within the city limits of Oroville. As long as they are currently employed with the city, the loan is not due and payable. But after, if they leave, then from the date that they actually sign the loan to 5 years, then they have to pay us off. A big part of what we do is the loan portfolio management. And so what that means is every single loan that we've had through the city, we have to manage whether there's late payments, property taxes are current, insurance payments are current. We do annual drive-by inspections for conditions. We do an annual certification that they're still the primary resident. We also handle all the loan payoffs, subordination requests, deferment reviews, bankruptcies, foreclosures, and code violations. So for single-family, first-time homebuyer, and rehab loans, we have 480 loans in our loan portfolio, and that's about $20 million. For multifamily, we have 8 loans, and that's over 10 million. And then for small business loans, we have about 18 loans and about 1.9 million. And this changes every day based on payoffs and new loans coming that have been signed. Under community development, we've been able to do a lot of different things for public and community facilities. Through grant writing and project management, we deal with all the procurement, labor standards of the construction projects, and then we'd monitor the projects. And we've been able to do repairs to the Carnegie Library, to the State Theater, the Chinese Temple, the Oroville Airport, and Municipal Auditorium, we're currently doing the floors. And they should be done by the end of April. We've done City Hall remodel and remodel of the police and fire station. We also have done renovations to the city and community parks, such as Hewitt Park, Rotary Park, Hammond Park, and we've done benches and waste containers. At the parks, we've been able to install the basketball courts and park benches and bocce ball courts and drinking fountains. We've also been able to fund through community development block grant program income and also USDA rural development funding. We've purchased 1 ladder truck, 2 fire engines. We just recently last year purchased a Type 3 fire engine. We've been able to purchase firefighter PPE, 2 police vehicles, and code enforcement staffing. We've also partnered with the YMCA, Catalyst, Domestic Violence, Boys and Girls Club. And in the past, we have done, we've partnership with Peg Taylor, which is no longer around, but also we've done youth build projects. And that's all I have tonight. Do you have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Councilmember Goodson.
Amy, to date, approximately how many affordable housing units is the city lacking in order to meet the state requirement?
I don't have those exact numbers. We have our RENA numbers, which is something that we have to comply with. The RENA numbers are regional housing needs, and those are identified in the housing element of the general plan. And that's something that I'm going to be bringing back at the next council meeting or the second one in April. And it'll be an update on how we're doing to meet those numbers. The 2014 needs were 1,700 for the city of Oroville, but that also included market rate and above market rate. I believe it was about 400 market rate units that we needed. We needed about less than 200 low income. So there's a need all across the board for affordable housing, market rate housing, extremely low. And the numbers where we're the highest under is extremely low. And then the next would be market rate. I do know that, but I don't know the exact numbers off. I have them in my office, but I don't have them with me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Pittman.
The grant writing and that type of activity, I recently been down to SCORE and the Sewage Commission, and there's some needs for plant improvements. Is there any potential grants out there that might be useful for that particular facility?
Yes, especially since November 8th, we've been meeting a lot with FEMA and Cal OES, and they have been bringing a lot of different options to the city. And I know that Scott at SCORE has been speaking specifically with them on some funding that might be available.
Well, and that's kind of critical because we can't really put the 1,700 or 2,000 home units unless we have the capacity to handle that new growth. So
in our last community development block application, we had worked with SCORE to try to get funding to increase the pump that they have, but the way that they service the county also, and the county is not low income, the city is 51% low income. If it just serviced Oroville, we would have been able to do the upgrade, but because it services areas in the county that is not affordable, we weren't able to make those numbers work. So there's additional funding, possibly USDA, possibly some funding we don't even know about that they're actually in discussions talking about that.
Good.
So Councilmember Pittman, there actually was a large meeting today, and I have a contact list which I'll hand to y'all, but that was one of the issues that came up, and a woman named Sally Tripp with USDA is directly contacting Scott to work on that specific issue. And they're pretty optimistic. Now what that means, I don't know. in terms of actual dollars.
So they didn't bring a checkbook.
They did not bring a check or a checkbook.
But I have been in a lot of the disaster recovery meetings, and we have all taken every opportunity that we can to discuss our limitations with sewer. And so I think we got their attention, and I hope that something's going to work out. Tom also was able to meet with people this morning, and there's a lot of different people that we're going to be meeting with over the next few months regarding different areas of how the campfires affected Oroville and possible funding in the future that we might be able to apply for.
The second question I have is, these presentations were good for the council to understand the status of your department. What is the status of your department in terms of staffing, personnel, and getting all these things done that you're presented to us?
I have three, including myself. I have myself and two admin assistants. Additionally, I have someone that does our inspections for us, but he works with Public Works also. So when I need him, he'll do first-time homebuyer inspections, or if we have a rehab, he'll go and check on the status of the projects for us, and different things that he'll do. But my staff is 3.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, just a real quick question. So Mr. Reed's project Base Camp just got funded yesterday at the Continuum of Care.
I saw that.
That's going to be 24 units. Would that qualify then as a very low, if you're familiar with that project?
I don't have any of the details on the project. I did ask for them this morning, and she said it should be available possibly next week. But I'm assuming it would be 30% or less, and that would help our arena numbers.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to public communication. It's the hearing of non-agenda items. Do we have any comments?
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor. Our first speaker is Shannon DeLong.
Hello. I brought some pictures for you guys to look at while I talk to you.
How you doing, Shannon? Thank you, sir.
So, first of all, I thought tonight was about improvement for downtown Oroville and some ideas. So recently, Parks and Rec had a cleanup along the river. I saw that and decided to participate in it voluntarily, and what I saw was absolutely horrifying. And I'd like to express my thanks to Parks and Rec for doing that, to allow me to get down there and realize how bad it had gotten. As a kid, I used to fish along the river with my grandpa, and I can assure you it's nothing like it is today. And code enforcement and everybody else that was involved, but Parks and Rec was a really big help, and I know code enforcement was too, to get the people out of there to allow us to clean it up. What's going on down there is not a homeless problem, it's a drug problem. Okay, so I know everybody calls it a homeless problem, not a drug problem. And I also know people say that we can't do anything with those people because it's not humane. People living in those conditions is not humane. And thinking that it was a downtown Oroville thing, I want to make a difference. Okay, I'm not looking for money. I'm not looking for a job. I already have that. I've been having problems getting anybody to talk to me. I've called stopped by the city council a couple times. I've tried calling Fish and Game. I've tried calling DWR. Nobody returned calls. I think actually they block them as soon as you mention what you're doing. Nobody wants anything to do with you. But I would like to be able to sit down with some people and try and figure out a way to make a difference. I know we want to make downtown Oroville a better place. I know I do. My mom and dad, I was raised downtown Oroville. We had a small business downtown Oroville, so I spent a lot of my time downtown Oroville. So hopefully by being here, maybe somebody will be willing to sit down and talk with me and figure out what we can do to make it better. I know other cities have done it. I know we're not the only city that has issues with this. Other cities have made a difference along their waterways. And
excuse me, sir. Your time's up. I'm sorry.
Okay.
If you want to contact me, go ahead and contact me. But I believe the jurisdiction of the river is CHP and Fish and Game. Yes.
Well, it's in downtown Oroville, so everybody sees it and thinks it's
California Highway Patrol and Fish and Game, but we are definitely interested in your program. Absolutely.
Peter Rhoda, and then Marlene Del Rosario.
Mayor Reynolds, members of the council. My name is Pete Rhoda, and my wife and I are campfire survivors. And we are currently living in our travel trailer. We're currently, unfortunately, living wherever we can have a place to exist. To compound the issue of being campfire survivors, my wife and I are also disabled and unable to work. So unfortunately, we don't have an income at the moment to get into an RV park. We're currently just basically back in a parking lot within the city limits, and we are attempting and have been attempting to find a place to move to that's outside city limits. Unfortunately, all the avenues that have been presented to us have unfortunately collapsed. My wife is unfortunately has a lot of multiple health issues, and at the moment she's deathly afraid that when we have a medical appointment tomorrow in Chico, and she's deathly afraid that when we get back into town that the only home we currently have is going to be gone and towed away. We're not trying to circumvent city ordinances or anything. We're just asking the city for perhaps a little more time, maybe 3 more days or so to the end of the week. We just this evening received 2 new possible leads that would allow us to go outside the city limits and possibly even be into a more permanent situation. And we would just like the time to be able to follow those leads up without having to worry about our only home being towed away. And since I'm out of time, I'd like to thank very, very much for the council's time.
Thank you. Don't we have an ordinance in place that's relaxing that?
Mr. Mayor, this isn't an issue of just camping. This is an issue of leaking sewage, and this is not the first go on this.
Okay.
I mean, Mr. Rhoda has received adequate and plenty of notice on this. I'm sorry the situation's led up to. It is unfortunate, but we can't have leaking sewage. I mean, it's just, and there is a good possibility, yes, the trailer will be towed, because we just cannot have that. It's an unhealthy condition. It's an unsafe condition. It's unfortunate. I really hope they're able to find something very rapidly in the next 18 hours.
Thank you.
Marlene Del Rosario, and then Tom Turk.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, thank you for your suggestion, Councilman Pittman. I would very much appreciate that. I stumble over Excel like the mayor. Thank you. What I wanted to ask about tonight was I happened to go to the Southside Community Center today, and I spoke with Reverend Kevin Thompson, and he said that he had been asked to remove the city seal from the Haven of Hope on Wheels. I feel real uncomfortable with that, and the reason that I do is because I remember a big discussion about this on the council about a year ago. And at that time, I believe we voted to approve the idea of the Haven of Hope and his use of the seal. So consequently, if this was not an item that was voted on by the council, I think it's something that does need to be voted on. There is a law or a rule already in place that was circumvented with the letter to request him to remove it. So if you look back in your minutes, I think you will see that there was a discussion and decision made on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can clarify that. That is absolutely correct in terms of the letter that was sent out. It came in front of council, and council did agree to add the seal to the letter. There's great concern about adding it to the vehicle, however, because if it's in an accident or anything like that, all of a sudden the city becomes party to anything that happens. So she's absolutely correct. We did ask to have it removed from the vehicle itself, and it's a liability issue, and that's the reason it was done.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
It was my understanding that the city paid to have that seal placed on the truck. Why wasn't this brought up then?
We didn't. Okay.
I can answer that if you like, Councilperson Draper. The mock-up that was sent to us did not contain the city seal. If it had the city seal on it when it was originally sent to us, we would have made mention of it then. Okay. It was different than what we originally received. It was minor, but that's why they weren't given notice ahead of time.
Thank you.
And our last public speaker for public comment is Tom Turk.
Mayor Reynolds and council members. For probably the last 7 years, I've been pretty vocal about the criminal element downtown and how it used to be, and the issues we have today. And so I kind of took it on myself to take a different approach. Stop the criticism so much, because everyone is aware of what's going on, and we hear it over and over again. I have taken the time to visit at least 60 to 70 businesses personally, and I prepared a letter of my concerns and directing my thoughts and hopefully the business owners' thoughts to a solution to this problem, not continually complain about it. And every single business that I talked to had a story to tell, and it was not pleasant. Most of them were along the same lines, but some even more difficult than others. And so I'm encouraging people, and I'm going to continue to try to visit the businesses together and encourage them to address a letter, and hopefully I'll get 100 to 200 letters that we can present to the Downtown Business Association, the City of Oroville, Business Improvement District, etc., letting them know that people want to change. And so, first of all, I was totally very encouraged by Elijah's house on what they're doing, because that is really a step in the right direction for change. Unless the criminal element has a change in mind and heart, they're not going to change. And we have many laws on the books today that are being broken daily. And so I have a plan and suggestions, and hopefully in the near future we can have a meeting. I'm sorry, about out of time. Real quickly. And so Jordan's Crossing has had that program too, but we're on the right track. And I want to commend Bill Lagrone, Dave Goyer, and all the people in enforcement. They're doing the best they can, and I appreciate them very much for what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. That was our last speaker. Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar. Are there any items that anyone wishes to pull?
Pull item 5 for me, please.
Looking for a motion to approve the consent calendar with item number 5 pulled.
I move that we approve the consent calendar exempt item 5.
I'll second.
Councilmember Draper.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item number 5, approval of contract with Duke Sherwood Excavating for excavation services at 1275 Mitchell Avenue. Councilmember Hatley, did you want to speak on that?
Yes, thank you. The reason I asked for have this pulled, the estimate is 138 and change, 138,000 and change to have the work done down there, and I realize the need for that and why we're doing that. But my concern is this. We're going to trade 19 acres of industrial property. Now, I've heard it said in this room right here that that's land is really of no value. Well, 19 acres of industrial property has value, especially when it has water, sewer, and electric on it. And there is an access road to it already. It's on the plan map if you look at it. May not be where it is right now, but there is an access road to that. The problem that I have is doing anything with public property. 7 people up here do not own that property. People of this community own that property, and it should be appraised before we do anything. Now, I have absolutely the utmost respect for Mr. Sherwood. I've known that man a lot of years. I went to high school with him, so I've known him a lot of years. And he is a reputable, honest man. I'm telling you that right now. So this has nothing to do with Mr. Sherwood. This would be with anybody. He is a good businessman, and he's not asking for a to have the property, have it assessed and see what it's actually worth, because he knows that it's worth more. He's got to know it's worth more than $138,000. I mean, it's commercial, it's industrial property. So for years, the city paid $850 a month for the EDUs on that property when it's set empty. They were just paying it. Because, and I heard it, if I heard it once, I heard it 100 times. That industrial piece of property was a diamond just waiting for the right industry to come in here to it. And that's why all of a sudden when I hear, well, it's not worth anything, that kind of goes against the grain. Anytime you tell me any property in today's age is not worth anything, something's wrong. And it needs an appraisal, and there may be a technical reason around it that we can get around not doing it, but I don't like getting around things. When it comes to city property, the people's property, I think the only true way to do this, to be fair to everyone, so everyone knows right up front that we're either getting a very good deal or we're not. And to me, I just want to be sure that we're not giving away $1 million worth of property for $138,000. Now, that's just where I stand on this. And so that's really why I had this item pulled. I wanted that statement made on record because, again, I really think, I know the land's been cleared. I've heard that there's all kinds of problems with it. But there's a letter in the file, or at least there used to be, from the Water Quality Board when those ponds were closed, that says that property is clear. There used to be 11 monitoring wells on that piece of property. They were pulled because they don't need to be monitored anymore. Water Quality Board said, you're good to go. So there may be debris on that property and trash and stuff that need cleanup, but there's no real environmental hazardous stuff on there that's going to cost a lot of money to do. So anytime I look at industrial property, and I don't care if it used to be, if it was rock piles or it is rock piles or dredgings or whatever. If you look, every piece of property down there was that. Every Oroville Boulevard, all those businesses were that. So to say just because it's tailings or dredgers that it's not worth anything is absolutely incorrect. Because if that's the truth, then the rest of the city's not worth anything either then, because it was all that at one time. Thank you.
Councilmember Draper.
Well, I also have some concerns about this. In the packet, it says that the property previously purchased by Mr. Sherwood, it's going to need excavation and cleanup, which would cost approximately $30,000, and the costs will have to be borne by the city. And I tried to get that information earlier today on why that would have to be borne by the city.
It's not the property that was previously purchased. It's the property we currently own.
Okay, it says here the property previously purchased, and so that's right in that paragraph, so
right.
It looks like it's with that. Okay.
No, it's our current property because of the ponds that are there, the tanks that are on the property, the liners that exist, and just the general state of the property.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. The other thing that comes to mind is that even when selling a house, you get an appraisal. You know, the banks want an appraisal. And so I think it would benefit Mr. Sherwood as well as the city if we had an appraisal. That way we'd know exactly what we're dealing with and what it's worth. And as far as a real estate agent doing it, I know they do an estimate based on comparables, but it would be interesting to find out what does the government code, in California say about fair market value versus comparables. And the other thing is, the city should be getting what the property is worth. And 2 years down the road, I'd feel really badly if Mr. Sherwood decided to sell it and maybe sold it for $200,000 and we gave it away, basically. So I don't feel comfortable, doing that. It's like a gift of public land and funds, almost. So that's my concern with it.
Yes, ma'am. Scott, could you speak to the government code, please?
Sure. There are provisions in the government code that where certain situations require an appraisal. One of them is eminent domain. If a public agency is going to take property by eminent domain, an appraisal is required. When a city is purchasing property, there are some provisions under some circumstances when an appraisal is required. But the flip side is actually not true. When a public agency is disposing of property, there is no requirement that the property be declared surplus, and there's no requirement that the property be appraised prior to sale. Again, you have hit on the reasons why it may be good to do an appraisal, but what is important, at least as far as the government code is concerned, is that number one, if there's a charter provision that deals with how to sell property in a charter city, then you follow what the charter says. Our charter does say that you have the power to buy and sell and dispose of property, but it doesn't give a procedure how to do that. So falling back to the government code, we look at the government code. There isn't a procedure that requires an appraisal. It's up to this body if you want to do that. Okay. But there's not a requirement in the government code or any requirement in any code when a city sells property that it obtain an appraisal before the sale.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Goodson.
I've learned many things since I've been on the dais. The cup can be half full or it can be half empty. It just depends who's making the argument for or against. With that being said, I'm old school. I'm from the old school, and I deal in facts. I cannot make an intelligent, well-vetted decision without the fundamentals. And the fundamental is I require an appraisal. For me, that is just standard operating procedure. And without that fundamental, the facts, I can't weigh in. So I have one question. Why is the city staff so dead set against obtaining an appraisal? I'm in agreement. I'm going to have to be in agreement with Mr. Hatley on this. The staff report states that this land, 19 acres with 13 EDUs, is of little or no value. I would venture to say that when the city, and I don't know if that's going to be this current city council, but in the future, when a city council in Oroville decides to expand this city through economic development, that property will be of significant value. And I would venture to say probably $200,000 to $300,000. So people that know me, I have a mental shelf. And on that shelf, I'm going to put this agenda item, things that make you go, And I would venture to say that this is, quote unquote, a steal of a deal.
Without jumping too far into the issue, because it's clearly a council issue, I will tell you there are other cities that in fact, for no exchange value, give land to private property owners to get them on the tax roll and to promote economic development. It's obviously up to you how you proceed.
Mm-hmm. Bill, the property in question on South 5th, currently how much income is that bringing to the city?
It costs the city money every month.
And the property at the corporation yard behind where we store our proceeds from our cleanups, how much is that bringing into the city every month?
That's currently also bringing in nothing.
And how much are we looking to bring in with the leveling of the land by Mr. Sherwood and the placement of the FEMA trailers?
The latest plan that was presented was for 80 trailers for MHUs for campfire victims, each one bringing in approximately $500 per month. For a total of 24 months, it would generate approximately $750,000.
And the work to be done at the corporation yard would cost the city around $140,000.
The work at the corporation yard would cost us somewhere about $110,000. The additional dollars would be that were put into the assessment of what the overall value that Mr. Sherwood would be exchanging to the city is also for the cleanup of the yard or the facility on 5th Avenue, the old ponds.
So actually, I'm seeing value in this property on South 5th Avenue. I'm seeing almost $900,000 for the city. Are my figures off, or is that what we're looking at?
If you were to add together the potential earning, if we did realize those earnings from the corporation yard and you added in the value of the work would probably would be. If you were going to factor it that way, you would have to back out any profit in the work that is generated by Mr. Sherwood. So you would generate somewhere in the 850 to 900, somewhere in that area, if that's the way you wanted to calculate it.
Sure, half full, half empty. I'm looking at things that are half full, and given the current income of both properties and the potential income, it is a no-brainer for me. I personally don't pretend to know the assessed value in something 5 or 10 years down the road, but I do know what the value is currently. And currently, we're getting $138,000 worth of work and a potential of $750,000 income to the city. And then we have a piece of property that is not frontage in between a dog pound and a sewage treatment plant. I'm sure that's prime real estate that is currently off the tax roll that is costing us money. So those are the facts that are basing my decisions. Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, currently the property that we're next to that we're offering in this, does it have electric service on it?
I believe it does. There used to be a building down there where there was storage. Yes, I know it has electric service on it, and the reason why I know that is because many years ago I responded to a call out there when I was working patrol where they had stole the parts out of the inside of the panel on the building. I don't know if I don't believe it's currently hooked up, but I know that at one point they did have the wires.
So if someone were to take that property, they'd have to apply to PG&E and get a commercial electric installation.
I would think they would have to go through a complete application process because the building was smashed and the electrical service was essentially destroyed. It is present on the property. I don't know what
that alone would cost more than the property's even being valued today. If anybody wants to try to develop something and ask PG&E for a commercial service, you're way over the top of that right now. I see this as a win-win for the city. Yes, it'd be nice to have an appraisal, but appraisal is only good for someone that will pay that amount. That property is set there for better part of 30 years and nobody's paid anything for it. So I'm looking at the city making a deal here that's a win-win for the city. And I understand if this was a different piece of property and we want to get an appraisal, that's fine. If the council wants to get a commercial appraisal, that's fine. But that appraisal isn't worth anything unless somebody will give you that amount for it. That's the real thing here. And I see this as a win-win. We see a piece of property that's been sitting on our deck for 30 years paying how much a month for maintaining the EDUs, and where's the win for the city on keeping that piece of property? I don't have a win here. And I just see this as a good deal all the way around. There's words that I like to use: efficient and effective government. And this is a good example of efficient and effective government. Because I'm going to say if we ask for an appraisal, we're probably going to see about 30 to 60, maybe 90 days to get a commercial appraisal. I don't know if you've inquired, but I'm going to say that's a reasonable period of time to have that done. And then where are we? We've got people that need fine places to live. I see this as a big help to that group of people. That population needs to have somewhere to live. So I'm going to support this measure as it is tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Hatley.
And I understand that. I get it. But those EDUs, if they don't stay with that property, are they going with that property or are they going back? Because they cannot be transferred. EDUs are site-specific. So are the EDUs staying with that property, or are they going to be turned back in?
No, if that did happen, I did inquire Councilman Hatley about that, if we could move them or something like that. I was told no, they stay with the property. There is no, you're absolutely correct, there is no going forward on that. If we make this deal and this is done, we will be in contact with SCORE to let them know that we are giving up the EDUs. And if Mr. Sherwood chooses to purchase those or make some deal with SCORE to keep those through whatever the financial arrangement would be, that will be up to him to do. What it does for us is it alleviates us of the monthly responsibility for that industrial EDU, and I believe we have 12 of them on that property.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the reason I say that because I happen to know that at one time those EDUs were going to try to be transferred to Delalo when they had their olive plant there on Lincoln, or still do, and they wanted to transfer those. And one of the scoreboard, well, he was the president of the scoreboard at the time, Ernie Reynolds. He fought, and it's in the record, and it's part of the bylaws down there that you don't transfer EDUs. They can't. They're non-transferable. They are to site-specific locations. So with that, but then with for $138,000, we're going to make $750,000 roughly, basically. So wouldn't it be cost-effective or better way to do it if the city found the funding and paid the $138,000 and had it done, and you're going to make $750,000? That looks like a pretty good off trade to me, and you still have your industrial property that you have not, and what little you're going to get off of it as far as tax rolls until something's built on that industrial property is minimal. I mean, that's and if the EDUs, if you're not paying that money every month for them, you turn them back in. So you're not out that expense either. So to me, if I'm going to spend taxpayers' dollars, I will find $138,000 somewhere, and rather than giving away 19 acres of industrial property. If I can make $750,000, I don't know too many business people that wouldn't do that. We'll trade $130,000 for $750. They'll find the money rather than, and still have your property that may or may not, but it's still a piece of industrial property that it has value. And that's the last you'll hear of me. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Hatley. With my math, if we pay $138,000 and we bring in $750, that takes us down to about $620. Is that $610? Somewhere in there.
$612.
Okay.
Mayor, we do have two speakers whenever you get to that point.
Okay. Well, do we want to hear the speakers before we vote, or did we vote first, right?
No, you listen, hear the speakers.
Oh, we do?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Speakers, please.
I have two public speakers, Tasha Levinson and then Marlene Del Rosario.
Councilmember Goodson's in the queue while we're waiting.
I just wanted to make a rebuttal in regards to what Councilman Pittman had stated. And I'm in agreement with you. You are absolutely correct. Because without a vision of economic expansion and development, or selling of the industrial property because the city has attracted, because we are visionaries, because we have attracted new industry and manufacturing, then you are absolutely right. The land is of little value to the city.
Speaker, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Regardless of what the government code says, you up here have a fiduciary duty, and part of your fiduciary duty is actually knowing all of the facts. In this case, you would have had an open bid on what the excavation would have cost, and through that open bid process would have a really good idea of what that cost would be. You would have some sort of appraisal, whether it was just a realtor sheet valuation on it, to give you a really good, separate from your thinking idea of what that property is worth, to think about what you're going to do as a trade, whether it should happen, whether it should not happen. Looking through the staff report on this, I couldn't figure out why something that was supposed to be all that North Valley Community Foundation cost was suddenly going to cost the city a piece of land plus $30,000 for cleanup to be able to give this land away. That looked to me like somehow this whole deal had changed, and that was just kind of being hidden. I think you should think about it. It also was unclear to me how that corporation yard, which right now is used for repair of all the city's police and fire vehicles, cleaning, washing, that kind of thing, is that still going to be usable for that, or will that use be lost, and do we have another place to put that use, and what is that going to cost us? So those are just some thoughts I had for this. Finally, I do think every agenda item that is going to cost us something should say on the agenda, not buried back in the staff report, whether it's coming out of a specific fund, general fund, whatever, because if we're ever going to get things in balance, you all have to be aware of that, and you have to be aware of it right on the agenda. Thank you for your time.
I would like to clarify that the site has tiers to it, and the community foundation would only be able to use the very front portion without this change. And the change is for the benefit for the long term to actually make the property level, except for the power poles that are there, which will remain in their basic configuration. And that's the reason for the difference.
I think there's a misunderstanding too that we're going to bore the cost of $30,000 to clean up the property on South 5th. That's not the case. Mr. Sherwood is going to bore that cost.
You know, the problem is in the staff
me,
report, it says that.
Can you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would you like to speak, Councilmember Goodson?
So I have Marlene Del Rosario next as the public speaker.
We have a Councilmember Draper that would like to speak, please.
It's not that Ms. Levinson is misreading it. It says the property previously purchased by Mr. Sherwood is still in need of an easement to access the property. And I checked on that, and there already was an easement, but it's not where he wanted it. This property is in need of significant excavation to fill the old settling ponds and cleanup. This cost will have to be borne by the city. And so it says this will cost $30,000. So it's talking about the previously purchased property according to the staff report. And that's what we're going by.
I think that must be a misprint because that's not the case. There must be something missing at the end of that.
I believe the clarification, and I would agree that it's a little misleading. The idea would be if the city retained that site, what we'd have to pay versus Mr. Sherwood paying. But I agree the language is awkward.
Okay, thank you. Speaker, please.
Yes, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I believe that my previous point was the fact that the council has already voted on something and staff does not have the authority to change a vote that the council has made. So the item of the city seal needs to be agendized and voted on again in order for
I'm sorry, we're on item number 5, ma'am.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm trying to clarify the previous problem.
Okay.
I agree completely with Tasha Levinson. This is two separate deals. You needed bids for the leveling of the property, and you have the sale of the property. The 19 acres. They're two different deals. They should not be put together in a sweetheart deal, which it looks like. It makes the city look unethical and unprofessional. So you need to do it in a professional manner. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't. I think it is a sweetheart deal for the city, and I think it would be a good deal for Mr. Sherwood. And Bill, what is the time constraint on the potential income for the FEMA trailers? This is going to go away, and all of the time that we're talking about months and months of process here, that this site could go away. This potential for this income.
Ask Mr. Lando to speak to that. He's been more
Mr.
involved
Lando.
in that.
Yeah, I guess I need to clarify several things. One is these are not FEMA trailers. This is by the North Valley Community Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And it's housing employees, and that's their goal, is to house employees. You are correct in that it obviously would take some time to both get the appraisal and to do a bid process. North Valley Community Foundation, through this entire process, is trying to evaluate the financial feasibility. They have a limited amount of money, and they want to try and figure out where to place that money. I'm not saying the deal would go away, but I think it'd be much more difficult. In fact, they hesitated even surveying the property until we said that we thought we might have an agreement to get it graded for them. Then they thought the deal was viable. I also want to say one other thing, because I can see it coming back to bite staff, and that is, they have a number of alternatives in terms of the number of units. It's somewhere between 60 and 80. We've encouraged them to put the maximum number in, but if they wind up with 60, I don't want council surprised.
And my point was the circumstances are going to come to an end, whether it's 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. That opportunity for income is getting smaller because there will be an end date.
It is, and at some point they're going to say, North Valley Community Foundation is going to say that it's too far out to be useful. These folks have already figured out other arrangements. At this point, I would tell you, based on our last meeting, which was, I believe, last week, they're still on board to do this.
Yes. Councilmember Smith?
Honestly, I've talked to the chief about this, and I'm a little uneasy with the whole situation. Being one that's purchased commercial real estate and residential, I think the points are well taken. I'd like the chief, that being said, to explain in greater depth perhaps some of the timelines, the pros and the cons. I think that really needs to be more thoroughly explained, because just on the face of this, I mean, you know, certainly, if this was my property, you know, I'd be thinking, how would I handle this? And the only way I would make a business decision to let this go is if there's a definite advantage, because I'm on a crunch of timelines. In other words, to swap the trade. It's gotta make business sense. So I just think that we're lacking. I think just if I'm out there, sitting out there, I'm thinking there's some information here I'm missing. And so just help us along with that process. As far as, you know, again, if we lost the deal, as we just kind of just skirted around a little bit, that would probably be a bad thing. And so, you know, what's at risk and what's the benefit here?
I think the risk that you run, you know, if you were not to have this deal, the city's going to have to, or would, if they would want to make their corporation yard usable, is going to have to come up with $100,000+ to move the aggregate back there and make it flat and usable. Right now, it is not very usable property. An additional risk you would run is the housing that potentially could go there for the campfire displaced individuals will not be available. Right now, there's a minimal amount of that available in the Oroville area, and they're scrambling everywhere to look for that. So we also run that risk. We run the risk of not having the potential income from having the housing there. We also are right now incurring a monthly expense maintaining the property on Fifth Avenue. The negative side to the property on Fifth Avenue is we have owned it for over 20, 25 years and nobody's made any overture to buy it. The location of the property, it's not road frontage. There's other properties out there for sale that are near Walmart, very near Walmart with road frontage. They're not moving. I did talk to a realtor about this particular issue, and I was advised we'd be lucky if we got an offer for $100,000 on the property because of the lack of road frontage, the location behind the dog pound, which causes the noise pollution from the animals, and then you also have the obvious odor issues occasionally or regularly from the sewage treatment ponds, and you also have environmental history with the property. We do have clearance from the Water Control Board that the property is clear and is usable. It's just not a very desirable piece of property.
How much does the city pay for the property?
Right now, as I could tell from the history of this, the history was really sketchy on this. It was difficult to find. What the original deal appears to be is that DeSallo gave the city $165,000 to take the property. So because they were aware of the environmental issues that existed with the property. So the city took the property. They have went through the process of cleaning the property. The city forgave the $165,000, $10,000 at a time for each year that DeSallo and Eamon Olive stayed in business. So our net investment in it, as I can tell from the file that I have, is we have very little in it other than whatever the cleanup costs were, which I haven't been able to locate those.
Do you know before it became city property, which at that point it's no longer receiving a tax, property tax? Do you know what the assessed value was prior to that when it was in private sector?
No, I do not.
Councilman Smith, the other point I guess I'd like to make is originally when we approached this and talked to council about it, it was really the good of providing employee housing, and that was a start point. And I don't know if a 90 or 120 day delay would make that go away. I suspect it would. And then when this was first brought up, all I could think of is win-win, because we would have a level corporation yard. We'd be able to put in the future parking. We already have a solar contract, so that would go over the parking. So I understand the issues have been raised, but from my perspective, I saw it as getting something back on the tax roll to a property owner that could use it. But more importantly for me personally was getting the employee housing.
Yeah. I think it's just important to outlay the benefits. In other words, we're doing a trade, right? And I'm thinking, gotten my business spidey senses on here, and I'm thinking, why should I do this? Why not go the other route that's been suggested here? And so there has to be, I think, a significant benefit that outweighs because there's a little bit of a risk. Well, I mean, in a way,
there is negative consequence to doing this too. It's exactly as Councilman Hatley said: is we're giving up a piece of commercial property, and it does have EDUs associated with it. The problem is you know, as I see it, it can be, you can get it appraised for anything you like, but if you don't have a buyer, it's worth exactly what you're getting for it now, nothing.
Right, and the other piece,
I know that's not, I can't make that decision for this council or this community. I'm just, you know, you can want anything you want for anything, but selling.
So those EDUs are a monthly outgoing cost. So right now we're spending money to hold that property as a city asset. So once we sell it to Mr. Sherwood, or he does the trade, it's a sell of type, then now that becomes a taxable asset to the city. So rather than spending money, now we're going to start receiving money. And then there's also potential of him converting that into some sort of commercial enterprise that could have other further benefit to the tax, as I understand it.
Correct. It will go back onto the tax roll. If some sort of enterprise is opened up down there, it could potentially create jobs, which would create an additional revenue source. You know, to answer the appraisal question, I did look into that. An appraisal is going to take us somewhere between 90 and 180 days to get back because it's a commercial appraisal. There's very few comps out there where they can comp this to it, and the cost is going to run us anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500 for the appraisal.
You know, and as I'm just processing this, the only part that's in the back of my mind, the county's going to assess this. Correct. And then so if it comes in and its assessed value is $138,000, then we just did an amazing job. But man, if it came in higher, we would all look pretty bad. So that's the role here.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Thompson.
Just to bring up the concern with several people asked for bids as far as the excavation goes. I actually brought that question up at last council meeting, and from my understanding, as far as the scope of work needed to be done on Mitchell, that his company was pretty much the only company in the area that can do the work because of the equipment that he has. That's correct, right?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
Councilmember
That's
Pittman.
all.
Mike?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I think the vision that Mr. Lando mentioned too is at the end of the day, when we've got this property leased at the city yard, which has been used for nothing other than empty storage, never been a part of anybody's process with the city yard as far as vehicles and all that. It's just empty ground that's just been used for pure dump storage. To turn that into a viable asset of the city, and then down the road to potentially have a parking facility for the football stadium, which is across the street, so people are not congesting our streets when they come to participate in that beautiful big stadium. I see this as a win-win again for a vision. So we all have to look at visions as we look at activities. And that property down there, when we got into the DeLalo thing, that was just a crazy, and it was part of an RDA project that kind of went south because we ended up stuck with a pond. Had we known they were going to change their process from salt to cold process, they didn't even need the ponds. They changed their process. So the city kind of got screwed in the deal, frankly. And I'll just say that right off the bat. We just got screwed. The council wasn't looking at it right off the bat. So this, again, is just a win-win deal. It's a piece of property on both sides that we, down the line, will have a city potential parking lot that may even have solar coverings. Wouldn't that be a nice idea to have for the city to offer that to our residents to participate in the recreational activities at the ballparks and at the football stadium? So,
I will again say that I'm familiar with another city that literally gave land away just to get it on the tax roll and get jobs. And frankly, it was very successful. They did not get any value for the land, but they did get a business that
just as a citizen, I've seen this city give away millions in properties for a dollar or nothing. We've got property sitting all over the place for $1 and nothing happening with it. Personally, I think we need to get some things moving to generate income. We can't just sit here and knock everything that comes along and be afraid that something might happen. You've got a reputable, multi-generation family his reputation is above reproach. You've got council members that whom were 7 2 weeks ago, and who agreed to move forward with this project. I personally am not questioning my decision or my the decision of the other 6 2 weeks ago. Councilmember Goodson.
I believe it was two weeks ago that we were all in favor of moving forward with I was hoping that there would be more facts, for example, an appraisal. And so with that being said, it sounds like, as I'm listening to the other council members, exempt Councilman Hatley, is that the argument in regards to, let's say for lack of a better phrase, skirting the bidding process and the appraisal process is a matter of convenience due to potential income. With that being said, here's the caveat. Let us bear in mind in the future, if we do it for one, we're going to have to be prepared to do this for someone else, a handshake deal, who would want to enter into the same type of agreement exchange a service for land. Because it's not a matter of if it is ever going to happen, it's a matter of when and who.
I would agree with that. I've seen the city enter into deals for a promise, no service provided, just a promise, and we're still sitting here with nothing on several properties. So I've heard comment a week or so ago that people were tired of the status quo. So am I. I'm the new guy. I'm tired of the status quo. Let's move forward. Let's do something. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, Bill, what's the cost outgo for the EDUs? What are we spending to keep that? And then has that property ever been up for sale? Have we ever tried to sell it before? And has there been offers made on that property in the past? Is there any kind of history with that?
The only person that's been interested in it in the past is Mr. Sherwood. And right now we are spending $420 per month on the EDUs.
Okay.
But we've never advertised it either.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, just given that this was a public works project or operation on this site at one time, it was a sewer treatment plant, right?
I believe it was originally a sewer treatment plant for the city of Oroville, and then it was purchased by someone else as settling ponds, and then we ended up with the back. You know, I'd have to ask some of the council.
Public utilities, what it was, start with.
So the property has some unusual history, to say the least. So it would take a certain type of individual willing to purchase an old site that once was the place where we sent what we didn't want, right? And then there's always that potential that something's found in there at a later date. And then at that point, if Mr. Sherwood now owns that property, then we would be absolved of any responsibility. Would that be the case? So for an example, he gets in there and he starts developing that site, and something was found. Because I understand there's old tanks in there in the ground?
They're
some
not
kind of liners or something in there?
There's above ground tanks that actually exist out there. I think it was part of the cleanup process and were abandoned after the process was done.
You know, maybe we should run an ad in the Wall Street Journal. I can write it for us. 19 beautiful acres near the foothills of Oroville, California, overlooking the sewage treatment plant and the business end of the dog pound. That I'm sure that the offers would be flowing.
I'm just trying to add perspective, I think, to everyone listening to this, because I think you have to have a good picture of the situation that's at hand, and you know, the deal that's being made. So I think that's important context.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
If I could, before just about Vice Mayor Thompson, to answer Councilmember Smith's question regarding any potential liability in the future, the agreement that we are making, the contract that's attached, does not give any representations to the buyer that of anything related to the condition of the property. We are basically saying we are telling you what we know, and whatever we don't know, we don't guarantee.
Because, you know, there's a thing called disclosure. And so within that, this once had all these things that, you know, happened there. And so just liability.
Yeah, we are not making any disclosures related to the condition of the property that will put the city at risk for future liability.
But Mr. Sherwood is potentially taking on a liability. Potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
In regards to this property, just kind of seems like at this point we're trying to squeeze blood out of a turnip. There is a lot of property for sale currently in Oroville that is frontage property that is not moving. If we were in a place where commercial property was moving at any kind of projected rate to where it looked like we could actually, even a year or two down the road, could get something out of this property, I think some of this conversation would be more viable. But in my opinion, if Mr. Sherwood could put this on the tax payroll and we can see this land move forward and we can move forward with the other property, I see no problem for us moving forward with this decision.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, real quick, I forgot what I was going to mention the last time, so I'm sorry for coming up again. But I happened to attend a meeting that put some reality. And the reality is the meeting was the long-term recovery of Paradise. Now, when we say we're going to get an appraiser, who? They have 14,000 appraisals needed up there. Every appraiser I know has been asked to take care of 200 to 300 appraisals. Who's going to do it? They have 600,000 trees that have to be removed from that community. 600,000. That's going to require 16,000 logging trucks to get out of that community, and these are dead trees. They also found out they have 50% of the properties in Paradise do not have a recorded survey. So when you fill out your application to rebuild your home, you have to have a recorded survey in order for your permit to go forward. North Star was there at the meeting. How many surveyors is it going to take to satisfy the 50% of the properties in Paradise that do not have a recorded survey? His answer was not even enough in California. Licensed surveyors to do the job. So let's put some reality here, folks. We don't have even the construction workers to do the job in Paradise. We're trying to find housing for them in this community. And if this little bit of Oroville is going to try to help out and put some workers in place for some housing, let it happen. Let's talk about what we really have as a reality. You couldn't get an appraisal today if you asked for it.
Thank you, Councilman Pittman. Looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8775.
So I'd like to make a motion to adopt 8775. I'm looking for the number. But I would also like to add that with that motion that the city, because there was a question about a cost, that there is no cost to the city in the trade for the property being brought to any kind of standard, that it is as is with no cost to the city.
A second.
Motion carries.
Next.
Moving on to public hearings. I'd like to open it up for public hearings. Staff presents answers and questions from council. But
Mr. Mayor and council members, as you obviously all recall, at the February 19th council meeting, this council approved a resolution of intent to establish a downtown Oroville Business Improvement District. As part of the process, you are required to open a public hearing and to hear any protests or any objections to the formation or the establishment of a business improvement district. So this public hearing is for that purpose. Now, the Brown Act, of course, requires that you listen to anybody that wants to comment, positive or negative. So anybody that makes any comments in opposition to the business improvement district, if a threshold number of individuals within the business improvement district object to it, then the business improvement district formation cannot go forward. That's 50% plus one, or a simple majority of business owners. So when the public hearing is opened, anybody who does object can come up, and if someone does object, I'll at the end of the comments I will ask if they're a business owner and what business they are. But anybody, positive or negative, can make comments about it. But again, the counting that needs to happen is we're counting objections, because this is the requirement. If you have a certain number of objections, then it wouldn't go forward. So this time it'd be appropriate, unless anyone has any questions, it'd be appropriate to open it up and hear any comments from members of the public or individuals who live within the business improvement district. Now, I'll put a pin in that for a moment and hold that thought for just a moment. After this hearing, nothing happens other than just you collect the numbers today. Assuming we can go forward, this will come back, I believe, at the second meeting in April for the adoption of an ordinance and for the formal approval of the business improvement district. So at this time, it'd be appropriate to open up for a public hearing unless there's questions or concerns from the dais.
thank you, Mr. Huber. Do we have speakers?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have 3 speakers. I have Andy Sablita, and then Bud Tracy, and then Tom Turk.
Good evening, Mayor Reynolds and council members. So it's shame on you that it is necessary for me to be here tonight to defend my rights. It is hard enough to succeed in business in downtown Oroville without another taxes being added. I've watched many businesses open and fail in downtown Oroville since purchasing my building in 2004. I am completely opposed to the formation of a downtown business improvement district for the following reasons. 1, it is not a voluntary business association. It's a mandatory tax that the businessman will be required to pay. Forced to join an association, then renew their business license. The fee will be collected by the city of Oroville, and if it is not paid, the city will not renew your operator's license. The business license and the operating of a private enterprise should not be tied to the BID in any way. This is not appropriate. The mandatory tax will be collected by the city and then distributed to a random group of people who are not elected by anybody in this membership, but who have simply appointed themselves to govern and spend money. Where is the accountability? This arbitrary tax is coming out of my hard work and my business. I have absolutely no say so in the way it is levied, collected, or spent. This is taxation without representation in its purest and most illegal form. A random group of people drew an equally random line on a local map and decided that they should charge mandatory fees and spend the money however they like. Half the people that they say they support the BID are non-paying entities. They will not be paying a dime. As such, I do not believe they should be considered in any decision by this council. A smart man once said to me, this isn't the first time a man came to Oroville selling magic beans. 3, there are 3 existing business associations in the downtown area that a business can join by choice. The Oroville Area Chamber of Commerce, the Oroville Downtown Business Association, and the Oroville Riverfront District. There is absolutely no need to establish a 4th involuntary association. There will be no added benefit to anyone that doesn't have the opportunity to join one that already exists.
Thank you.
Sir, your time's expired, but let me, if I may ask a question, tell me your business.
Gold City Mercantile. Well, you know, since I sat here all night listening to you guys talk, and nobody can let me, I was told I had 3 minutes. I wrote a 3-minute, I spent hours bringing this down to 3 minutes, okay? But I'm not allowed to finish the last 2 paragraphs of it because you got a bell over here ringing that tells me I have to shut up. Well, here's my paper, here's my piece of paper saying why I'm against it and what my business is, and you can read the last 2 paragraphs if you're even interested.
Sir, I would like to hear it.
What do you mean? The bell went off and you told me to shut up.
Sir.
It's all right there.
This is your time.
I was told I had 3 minutes, so I set hours making it 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, now you have an extra minute.
Okay. And the council approved to me that the BID will enhance, upgrade, or do anything to make the downtown business environment better. Have you been to Gridley lately? Have you seen the lack of success created by the BID? The downtown Gridley is a ghost town. There's nothing there. Okay, to sum it up, I am completely opposed to additional tax being added onto our downtown businesses, as you should be, Mr. Mayor, as well as all the rest of council should be. This additional tax will do nothing to help the already struggling downtown area. I believe the city has many more pressing issues to contend with rather than wasting their time getting involved with the BID. Second off, I am not the smartest man here. I'm uneducated. I am not the richest man here. I'm a broke man. But I'll tell you right now, I know the difference between right and wrong, and so does everybody else in this room.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bud Tracy, and then Tom Turk.
Hi. Bud Tracy, Tracy Realty Company, and spoke to you before February 19th. Gave you the impressions and the concepts and the things that I'd been through that I felt had this assessment district, a benefit assessment district, not a tax. I understand Andy's points. He's made them clear before, and he has the right to do that, and it's absolutely, truly his belief. But anyway, how we started, A while back we went through the contract dates and all the meetings that we had, the input that's been done. One of the things that I actually, last time I ended up being the only speaker, and I really wish you could have heard from some of the team that had been working. The ODBA, for example, had 7 to 10 members when we first started this. That membership is up now, but one of the things that the ODBA has not worked in the past for a lot of years, and it's because it's always been voluntary and it's always been a few people. They burn out, and after they burn out, the membership goes down, so it's up and down and up and down. One of the concepts of a BID is to have one voice for 124 businesses, so that when the council needs to talk to the downtown, they should be able to talk to the board. The board is elected by the people in the district, so they do have the right to pull them out. If every year, at the end of a year, the ODBA is not doing a good thing for the downtown, then in a sense, you have the right. Dave would explain the details of how, but it's terminable at any one year, at any time, if they're not doing the job. So, and the biggest thing I think is that answer of a few people always try. I've watched it for 18 years that I've been over here in the downtown, and they always burn out. They always hit that burnout spot. And it's always 2 or 3 or 4 people trying to put all those events together. Right now they have an events committee of I think 6 or 7 people, and they're wonderful people. That's all they're focused on, is doing the events. There's other people that are looking at grants for the improvements of downtown physically, things of that type, and so on. So you're talking about a lot of people, and every year that number can change.
Thank you.
Mr. Tracy, I think it's safe to assume you're not in opposition to this. All right. Because I'm counting those in opposition.
Mr. Huber?
Yes.
I presented the council with a letter earlier this evening from a downtown business owner that is in opposition to it. The owner of J&J Auto is
I've got
presented his in written format.
I've got a copy of it, and I'll include that.
The other thing I'd like to make clear, Mr. Mayor, just because the line's becoming kind of blurry suddenly, this is not anything that the city is doing. This was brought by the Downtown Business Association. We do not make money from this. We do not benefit from it. It cost us money because we have to process these things and forward this money. Again, we are facilitating a process. It's nothing that we brought forward, we thought up. This is from the outside, and we're trying to accommodate the request of the majority of the business owners in the downtown area.
Per state law.
Thank you.
And our final speaker is Tom Turk. Okay, never mind.
So at this point, it's simply a process of closing the public hearing and moving on to the next agenda item.
Okay, closing the public hearing. Moving on to regular business. Item number 7. Fencing a guardrail replacement and upgrade on Table Mountain Boulevard above Fish Hatchery.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is an item that was requested by the Vice Mayor at the previous meeting regarding the potential replacement and improvement of the walking path from the Thermalito area to the Fish Hatchery down Table Mountain Boulevard. This is just kind of a depiction of it, so I know everybody is probably familiar with it, but I wanted to give you kind of an idea of what we're talking about. What we're suggesting that we could potentially do with this piece of city property here is to go in, and this would be a multi-phase project. The first one would be to remove the fencing, as you can see, that is in very poor condition. Take that fencing out, put a safety barrier behind it, such as a commonly referred to as a guardrail on a highway or something like that, and then put fencing back up. I've envisioned a black vinyl coated chain link type style of fencing because it is aesthetically pleasing. The barrier that will be behind it, the guardrail, is to protect the pedestrians that are walking down through there. Now, while the fencing is out and the guardrail is out, we would resurface it, blacktop the walkway down through there, do any necessary repair that is in that area. And then when the guardrail and the fence is put back in, we would want to do that in a way so that if a vehicle did hit that and did cause damage, that those poles could come out and be easily replaced. That way it isn't many, many years you're looking at something that's damaged and can't be easily replaced without shutting the road down. Another phase of that project would be to put in solar lighting so that it is lit at night on that side of the road. We would also be looking at replacing the vines that used to come down the side of the hill there and replacing the watering system that goes in there with computer controlled valves and some sort of a watering system that is not going to be as susceptible to vandalism as it was in the past. It was used to be on all the time. It was a very aesthetically pleasing entry into the forebay area, into that side of town. So what we're looking at is sending this out for getting some prices on what it would actually be if the council is interested in doing that type of a project in that area. We're estimating that with the solar lighting, the necessary water valving, replanting of the vegetation that is there, replacing the fencing, putting in the guardrail and resurfacing, it would be somewhere in the $200,000 range. Don't know that for sure. We'd have to get prices on all of that and send it all out for that, and then bring that back to council for final approval. We believe that RDA bond residual monies could be used for this. It would have to be sent out to our bond council to ensure that this is a allowable use for that money, and then bring everything back to council for final approval and any other concept changes that you would like to do at that time. If you have any now or anything you'd like to add or subtract or include with this, please let us know, and we'll include that with our request and bring you back some hard numbers if this is a project that the entire council would like to see us pursue.
Thank you. We have some members in the queue. Councilman Pittman?
Yeah, I certainly support this project. That fence has sat there for a better part of 40, maybe 50 years, and it's a mess. In fact, last week I made a phone call because it had fallen down in the roadway, and I want to thank the city crews. They came and responded right away, and it was actually probably 4 or 5 sections of the fence was laying in the roadway, and people were driving around it. So it's time to do something about it. I certainly approve the idea, or support the idea of having lighting and solar lighting. I saw this similar walkway along Clear Lake, and I just looked at that and I said, boy, that'd be great to have this particular walkway that way. The guardrail is a great idea. I hadn't thought of that, but given the propensity of drivers to not stay on the pavement, it's probably a great idea to have a guardrail there. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Vice Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. Yeah, this item was actually first brought up for the SBF when I said bring it back for this. So this would be coming out of our RDA funds, from my understanding. This walkway is used by a lot of people who use the services, and I myself have actually driven around that fence while it was laying in the road. Wasn't 2 lengths, but it was quite a bit in that full lane, and had to merge around it, so it was a hazard. I also understand that it's been in this condition for many years. I think somebody told me in the 70s they saw it in the same or horrible condition. So anyway, it's about time, and the lighting for sure. Having a lit walkway for the safety of pedestrians is really important. So it really comes down to an improvement for the whole community and safety for those who walk on the walkway. So I hope this moves forward for the benefit of the community.
Councilmember Goodson.
Sometimes I ask questions that I already know the answer. So, Chief, I have a question. Will this project be going out to bid?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
So we'll have if we vote to move forward, we'll have another opportunity then to approve those bids.
What we'll do is we will prepare based upon the concept that's been expressed to you, with any changes that you direct us to do, we'll prepare a bid document. We will send that out. We will bring those back when those come in, and we will essentially evaluate those bids that meet it, and we will make a recommendation of those bids. Yes, you will see the bids. You will give the final approval. And if something happens between now and then where the monies are not available from this particular pot, we will come back to you, let you know that we cannot use that money for that, and if you want to stop the project at that point, we can.
I just have a further comment. I mean, I'm certainly in favor of enhancing the aesthetic value of our community, and that certainly is an eyesore. I guess my only comment is that as you move along that corridor and cross the bridge, you come to the roundabout, and the roundabout is in disrepair because people have decided to bump into the rail that's there. And I guess, I mean, I'm certainly, I like this. I just like to see us maintain our other assets that have a lot of aesthetic value along that corridor. And so if we're going to invest in this, and this is a good thing, and we need to raise the bar, we need to start moving forward. As I think folks know, I'm completely in that. But I just, just bringing that up, and it's just an opportunity to. There's been some disrepair. There's some painting that needs to happen. That whole corridor because it's a safety issue, it's an aesthetic issue, and it's tied to that. And so those lines and that roundabout, that whole corridor needs some work. Is there any consideration with this project to getting that whole piece done?
That is not part of this project, but I think once we get the fencing in, if you like that, we would probably be wise to look at doing something about the railing at the roundabout. That railing, in my opinion, was a mistake. It's difficult to replace. It's expensive to replace. It's constantly seems like something hits it. We need a more. It's not going to be durable. When a car hits it, it's going to damage it, but it's going to be less expensive, and it's going to be nowhere near as time-consuming to replace. So I think we need to look at that. I think that would be an appropriate conversation to have as part of your goal setting and what you're prioritizing of what are the services or the things that we can provide in the city or we should start doing more of or differently or better. I mean, so the council will provide that direction as we go along through that. But I believe you are correct. That railing has really been, it's nice to look at, but it really doesn't serve a good purpose other than what it's currently doing. It gets damaged and stays that way because it is difficult to replace and repair.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Hatley.
Thank you. It's been quite a while since I've walked up and down that hill, as you can probably tell. But, with putting in a guardrail plus the fence, will it still meet ADA standards as far as width, or are we going to have to do something with that bank?
No, sir. It would still be wide enough. We're going to try to put the guardrail we'll put the poles to the guardrail itself. We will put the piers that hold it as close to the edge as possible, then put it this way, then back the fence right against that. So we would be, whatever the width of the guardrail is plus the width of the fence, we'd be losing about a foot probably, but we're about 5 foot wide to 6 foot wide up through the entire area, so we have adequate room.
Okay, like I said, I haven't walked down that thing in a long time, so I just wanted to make sure. I couldn't remember exactly how wide it was, and when you're talking about the guardrail, I knew the fence wouldn't be an issue, but with that, so that's all I needed. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Is it possible when you get the bids to do an itemized bid? So that
item by item?
Yeah, well, 3 different categories in my opinion.
Sure, we could put out a bid that would be just your basic bid to resurface it and put in a fence, exactly as exists. Then we can add alternative 1 guardrail, alternative 2 solar lighting, alternative 3
plumbing.
Yeah, I mean.
So yeah, for me, it's 3 categories: railing, lighting, plumbing.
Correct.
Just so that we can.
Right, and the plumbing thing was kind of an afterthought, quite honestly, because we've taken the approach, and I don't think it's just Oroville. I think it's everywhere. Is that we become frustrated when people are breaking things, so we just give up on them and we let them die. I think this really impacts our community because if you have a recollection of what this was as to what it is, this is horrible. I mean, it used to really be beautiful coming down through there, where you see the ivy, and it's really unfortunate that we lost our will to continue that fight against the vandalism. But we can't give up. There has to be a way, whether it's deeper pipes, galvanized pipes. There's flow monitors now on these sprinklers that if you see it flowing, you can shut it down from your handheld cell phone. So there just has to be a way to do this. I mean, and we're going to have to look at all of the avenues for this. But to answer your question, I'm climbing off my soapbox. Yes, we can put it out with alternatives.
Thanks.
And that's I'm involved in government contracts, and that's typically the way it goes. Is each trade is broken out. You'd probably be looking for a general contractor to orchestrate the whole thing, and then he would hire the subs.
There's no masonry involved in this.
Yeah. How much is in the RDA?
I think a retaining wall on the right side might be part of safety issue.
I've got some connections to a medium-sized masonry company that might be willing to donate some aesthetically pleasing posts or columns at each end just to catch your eye. Yes.
That'd be nice. I'm glad you know other people in the industry.
I know some. Councilmember Goodson.
Chief, we have severe criminal activity that is 24/7. You have the orchard, the olive orchard up there. So what is your plan to mitigate that traffic so that we don't have another reoccurring problem with the the water valve treatment that's going to go in for beautification purposes?
Yeah, that's a good question. The reality of the matter is that you're not going to enforce this away. It has to be done through environmental design. It has to be done through, and just some of the thoughts off the top of my head are deeper pipes, galvanized pipes coming up that when you kick them, it just hurts your foot. They don't break. Things like that. I believe we're going to have to address it through those environmental issues. We're also going to have a robust code enforcement program, because those types of villages that exist, they have to be dealt with on a regular basis. A code enforcement program that has the resources to actually do something other than just tell us that there's a problem. So I think it's going to take a holistic approach, and I think this, we're kind of back to the goal setting thing. The council will set us, what are your priorities? How are we going to fund those? And how would you like us to go about this? So I think it's going to take a multi-phase approach to this.
Did you have something else? Well, Councilmember Pittman would like to speak.
And I agree with you on that topic. I don't like to use the word homeless category anymore, because I think what they really have got down to is just street criminals. They don't pay attention to anybody's rules. They don't pay attention to any value systems. I've had 7 encounters myself with my little business just in the last week, and now I go down in the middle of the night to wake people up to make sure they're not there. And it's going to take that kind of diligence and new thinking, because I'm all for helping those that are worthy of helping themselves, but we have a population that just doesn't want to do anything other than live off our dime. And I don't know how we're going to take care of that, but I appreciate the discussion, and I certainly think that maybe some fencing on the bottom side to keep them out of coming from the orchard might be a possibility, but we'll see how that goes down the ride. Thank you.
I heard in the last week or two, can't remember exactly where, but in somewhere in one of my circles, that someone was actually purchasing that land up top and looking to develop it. So I don't know how that goes with the historical value of the Eamon olive orchard. I don't know if there is any, but that's what I heard. So I think we can look forward to someone at least trying that.
Excuse me, can I say something? I'm sorry I lost my temper. If I could have stayed on the page, I wouldn't have. I mean, no disrespect to any of you on the council. I just, 14 years of trying to do something down here, and it's just for nothing. But I do apologize.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments, Mr. Saplita, sir. And I think that if we can talk and be more approachable to each other, I'd love to be able to work some stuff out. But we have no dog in this fight with this BID. We're simply collecting funds. We're not making any money. The city is not involved in this other than collecting the funds. So
I don't know, sir. I've read a whole lot about it, page after page. And you are responsible if they make a mistake. The city of Oroville is responsible, not the BID. You.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Okay.
You need a motion?
We get a motion?
I move that we direct staff to prepare the documents to release for bid and negotiate contract for project. In addition, directing staff to verify the funding source and bring the entire project back to council for final approval.
I'll second that.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 8, funding for code enforcement activities.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor and Council. What this item is essentially asking for supplemental budget funding for the code enforcement program. Currently what we have is a code enforcement officer with no funding to essentially do any activities. The code enforcement officer spent 45 minutes the other day in the hallway waiting to talk to me to get authorization to purchase 2 panels of rental fence because he had come across a pool in a backyard that was full of water and left unfenced. It was an unsafe and condition that needed to be dealt with immediately. The reason why he did this was because he has no funding. We've created a program that through grant funding we have the personnel. We're able to write a letter, but we have no teeth in that. We're a paper tiger. So what we're looking for is for the rest of this fiscal year, we've asked for $15,000 of supplemental funding for activities. When a situation does arise, they can do something with that. We're going to become more aggressive with our code enforcement at this point. That aggressiveness is going to lead to potential litigation, is also going to lead to situations where people are going to have a right to an administrative hearing. For the administrative hearing, we're going to have to reach outside of ourselves and to another law firm that Mr. Huber has arranged for us to send up a hearing officer to hear those citations when they do come in. Because what we're envisioning is a program where we go out, we identify a problem, we identify it with the owner, we ask the owner to take care of it, we give them notice, give them 10 days, if it's something that can be handled within 10 days. After that, we come back. If the problem hasn't been handled or it has not been addressed, then a citation is going to be issued. The person is going to be cited administratively. The administrative process will then begin. At that point, we have great potential to exposure of litigation. We are also going to need the hearing officer after that to hear the citation. If the issue is taken care of prior to the administrative citation hearing date, and it's been verified by the code enforcement officer, it will come off the roll, very similar to court, as showing it's corrected. If it is not, then they will have their hearing. After that, we'll move through the steps of alleviating or taking care of the problem as a city. We will expend dollars to address that issue. Once that's done, we will go through a leaning process of the property so that we can recover the city's dollars that were expended on that property. If it exceeds the value of the property, then we will most likely go through a process of I don't want to say seizing the property, but leaning the property to the point that it becomes the city's property, and then will be sold at either auction or at the tax sale that the county holds annually. So we just want to have a more robust, more aggressive program so that we can address these issues, not just point out what's wrong. I'm frustrated hearing people, you know, they're upset with our lack of doing anything. You know, people are pointing out to me constantly what's wrong. I see it too. I know it. I mean, I know we need to clean that up. The reality is there's no funding behind this program to do anything about that issue. So we're just looking for this next couple months for the $15,000 till the end of the fiscal year to do activities as needed. We may spend the money. We may not spend the money. If we don't come across anything that requires any expenditures, there will be no expenditures. We will be coming back to council at the next council meeting with a potential contract with a law firm that will provide us an administrative hearing officer for you to evaluate and decide if that's something you want to enter into for these citations. We'll be doing that part. And then as we go through our budgeting process this year, we're going to be looking for more funding to do more code enforcement activities. Now, whether those activities include community-wide cleanups or they include code enforcement action, more aggressive code enforcement, that's going to be up to the council to decide what we do with that. I know one issue that we ran into this week too regarding or relating to code enforcement was an issue with Recology. I was contacted by the manager of Recology locally, and he has let me know that there's been a significant uptick in the last couple of weeks of people calling Recology asking for free dumpsters. Recology does not give free dumpsters. They are a private business that are in business for profit, and they can only do so many of those. They like to partner with the city and with other public groups, but they don't do it for individuals. And their office is being inundated with phone calls from people asking for free dumpsters. They don't do that. So if we could just, I understand everybody's anxiousness to get things cleaned up and to, you know, it's spring and get things renewed for the year, but that's just not something that Recology does. So that is an issue with them, but it is something that you know, our code enforcement can certainly work on with community-wide things. You know, but we're also going to have to take an approach, I think, on some issues with more aggressive enforcement of our code.
Thank you. I I read an article in the paper a week or so ago that where there were some comments that these community cleanups have been going on for years and years and nothing's changed. So I personally am looking forward to following policy and procedure to change these things, because it doesn't, for me, ownership is synonymous with responsibility, and when you own something you need to be responsible for it. So I'm looking forward to a new approach, which is really the old rules and laws, but it seems to have gotten lost in the shuffle here as of late, and maybe 20 years. I have no idea, but I'm just saying that there are policies and procedures in place, and I believe that we need to follow them. Councilmember Goodson.
I believe that these policies and procedures have been in place for a number of years. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the process of the administrative hearing and the judge, are they not a part of our charter?
They're part of our municipal code, yes, ma'am.
They're a part, and so at what point did it cease to exist?
It never existed.
And it just was not enforced. And so, second, I want clarification on the staff report states the funding provided is restricted for staff time only. And so when I hear you saying that these monies can be allocated for activities, then what probably comes to the average person's mind is now we have monies to do nuisance abatement that will cover the cost of blight. So can you clarify that, please?
Where does it say it's only for staff time?
Paragraph 3, the funding provided is restricted for staff time only. No monies have been allocated for activities.
That's correct. CDBG dollars are not for activities. They're only for staff time.
All right. So this particular funding, can it be used for blight cleanup?
This funding can be used for any dangerous situation that exists that needs to be immediately handled, such as fencing. Say there's a huge dump of something somewhere. It can be used for dumpsters too.
Let me give you an example. We have talked. We have exhibited pictures of a specific property right in front of Central School that our kids play in. It is a nuisance. It is a safety hazard. Is that the type of project you're making reference to?
That would be very similar to what we are talking about, yes. What we would do is, how I would assess this is as the code enforcement officer prioritizes these issues and say, this is the most pressing, dangerous issue we have that we need to deal with, we would go with those first. I know exactly the place you're talking about, and I don't know if that's the worst one that's out there. I just know it's in a really bad location.
For our children?
Right.
Yes.
So, yes,
I would like to comment on that. The school is in the process of purchasing that property so they can make it the entrance to the school. So that particular property is being dealt with.
And ideally, in a situation like that, what I'd like to see us do is rent chain link fencing, the stuff they put up temporarily around that as we move through the administrative process. And then we just lean back against the property once we get it. If they don't take care of it themselves in an adequate amount of time, and I believe these property owners have had more than an adequate amount of time to do this, have just in essence chosen not to. Then we just go back against them, and then we get the property, put it back into someone's hands that will make some sort of a reasonable or good use of it, and let them have at it if we can recover as much of our cost as we possibly can along the way.
Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm totally in support of this agenda item, and I have a lot more discussion when we have to the goal setting session on this particular topic of dealing with the enforcement activities. We did have a hearing officer before, but that was before LaGros, so I'll back in the Zollner days, we actually did have a hearing officer, and that's what gives us eventually the legal right to go on someone's personal property. When we've gone through the process and developed that, certainly need to bring that process back in place. But I'm going to add the comment and thought pattern because I want to say it now so when we do get the goal setting, you can see what I'm talking about. We had a team approach. We would take a block or a property, and everybody would be there at 9 o'clock on a certain day. We had the police department, fire department, health department, code enforcement, and yes, even the city attorney in boots on the property as a team approach. You're good for that, huh? He's in. So that when we look at a property, we can take care of all the cadre of problems that day. And then everyone can go back to their offices and work on parallel to enforcement for that particular project. That's what I'm looking for down the line. So I just want to throw that idea out there. When we get to the goal setting, I'm going to have a lot more details to talk about it. But and maybe Scott can get a pair of boots to be ready to go down the road. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
I just want to say I appreciate Bill taking action on a request by the council, in that I think this is a direction that I think all of us feel it's important that we begin to step up on our code enforcement, because that's really the teeth that the city has, and that impacts all of us in the way of quality of life. And so we have a certain responsibility as council members, as just citizens of our community, to ensure that we're maintaining a certain level of aesthetic value. And so I think this is just the first step of many steps, and kind of restoring public trust, because I can't think of anything more frustrating to be a citizen in our community and to see someone violating our just blatant violation of our codes and complain, and nothing ever come about as far as any kind of litigation or action or steps taken by the city. So I apply. Thank you. I'm completely in favor of this. I think it's it's time that we begin to take these initial steps forward. So thank you very much.
I would like to ask the council members if they've any or all of them have been to the corporation yard and seen the collective piles of mattresses and tires and things from these cleanups. How much is it going to cost for us to get rid of these tires that are down there collected?
The tires and the mattresses together are going to cost us between $5,000 and $6,000 right now to dispose of.
And we've been working on those piles, haven't we?
We've been working on those piles for several years. We've used every amnesty program as it comes up. We take as many as we can until they ask us to please stop.
Right. Okay. Well, that's why I'm in favor of moving forward with code enforcement. So if everybody does show up and we do these cleanups, then they have sustainability. Because all that I have heard is we've done this over and over, and I personally don't want to do it once. But if we can do it once and sustain it, okay. And Nether, I would like to respond to a comment. If things happen in certain people's neighborhoods, how would they react? I'll tell you how I reacted. I have a disabled elderly lady who lives behind me who has grandkids in their 20s who collected treasures and placed them in the driveway, old TVs and mattresses and things. And me and a couple neighbors got together and went over and knocked on her door and asked her if she minded if we cleaned up her yard. And within an hour, that yard was looking just like everybody else's on the block. So that's how I would handle it if it was in my neighborhood. Councilmember Smith.
I'm done. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Looking for a motion?
I move.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I move that we approve the necessary budget adjustment to accommodate our code enforcement activity.
I'll second that. I'm louder than you.
You are. I defer to the ladies.
It's a tie. It's okay.
Motion carries.
Thank you, council.
Okay, moving on to item number 9, appointments to councils and local committees. We're going to make some changes on some committees. What's that? Doing it again. Okay, airport land use, we had Councilmember Draper, Councilmember Goodson. We are removing them and replacing with Councilmember Pittman. Arts Commission, we had Councilmember Draper, Councilmember Hatley as an alternate. We're removing Draper and replacing with Eric Smith as a primary and Art Hatley as the alternate. Butte County Water Advisory Board, we had Janet Goodson as the primary, Eric Smith as the alternate, removing Councilmember Goodson and placing David Pittman as the primary and Eric Smith as the alternate. Butte County Continuum of Care, we had Councilmember Draper as the primary. We're removing Councilmember Draper and replacing with Councilmember Smith. We had Loan Advisory, Housing, and Economic Development. We had Councilmember Draper as a primary, and we are removing Councilmember Draper and replacing her with Mayor Reynolds. Oroville Recreation Area Committee, we had Councilmember Goodson, Councilmember Hatley, and we are removing, as Councilmember Goodson was the alternate, we're removing her as the alternate and replacing her with Eric Smith. Sustainable Groundwater Management, we had Councilmember Goodson as primary and Eric Smith as the alternate. We're removing Councilmember Goodson and replacing with Councilmember Hatley. Moving on to reports, discussions, correspondence, council announcements and reports, please. Councilmember Pittman.
Like I mentioned, I attended the long-term recovery meeting for Paradise. It's an eye-opener. It happens every 2 weeks. There are huge amounts of work being done on a whole lot of things. I won't repeat all the numbers, but they don't know where they're going to put the 600,000 trees. If anybody's got a use for them, please raise your hand. They can't find a biomass within reasonable distance to take them to have them burnt. If they're not milled within 6 to 8 months, the wood's no good. And they don't have a mill in California that's even willing to accept the wood. So there's even an option about burying it, just to get rid of it because of the bark beetle problem and the infestation problem that's already happening. So someone who has start up a firewood business or something like that, there's a good opportunity.
Wow, 600,000 trees.
Exactly. And that's done by a very detailed study that the town of Paradise contracted with and did a test area and so on and so forth. So the numbers are really off the chart. It's an epic event. I don't think, well, I know as a community in the same county as Paradise, we're not aware of how big a problem they are having up there. We really are not. And I was appalled that I hadn't been there before to listen to their problems and listen to what's happening. It's epic is just a simple word. To not even have enough surveyors to get the surveys done. I asked, how many surveyors do you need? We don't know. So I will attend some more of those meetings just to bring the information to the council and be aware of the scenario. It's going to be a tough decade. I think a decade of 10 years is probably reasonable just to listen to what's happening, how they're trying to get things done. The workers, Butte College has started a program to train construction workers. I'm not sure how soon that's going to come online, but it's being moved through the process very fast. And there's going to be opportunities for jobs, just flat out. There are, but they have to get people trained up to do the work, because we just don't have the workforce. So, just a little bit of good information to share with you.
Thank you for that uplifting comment. No, the magnitude is in. I mean, it's unfathomable. It's something else. Thank you, Councilmember Pittman. Councilmember Draper's in the queue.
Well, I was sick yesterday and unable to attend the Continuum of Care meeting in Chico. However, I did serve on the ad hoc committee there about the HEAP funding. And so I attended 2 meetings for that, March 4th and March 6th. And our committee made some recommendations to the Continuum of Care Council, mainly that the rubric for evaluating the nonprofits was really badly done. They were not weighted in favor of housing, and HEAP funding, the H stands for housing, emergency housing. And so our subcommittee, our ad hoc committee, made some recommendations about that the rubric needed to be redone, and in the future they needed to make it weighted more in favor of housing instead of other services. We were told that we could not change anything as of this date. I was disappointed about that because they would have to go through the whole process of advertising the thing. They'd have to reject all the applications that they had received, and they'd have to start all over, and then they would miss deadlines. And so we're hoping that in the future that housing will be the priority that it should have been. And it was also, I advocated for Oroville that I noticed on the awards that there were 2 14-unit projects that Ron Reed is doing here in Oroville, but nothing for the rescue mission, nothing for the Haven of Hope on Wheels shelter. And so I was very much disappointed, with how that went. The other thing I wanted to mention is that every 2 years there's a count of homeless individuals. It's called the PIT, or Point in Time Survey, that's done by the Continuum of Care. And volunteers are needed to help with it, and the count will be done this year on March 28th. It was delayed because of the campfire. It's normally done in January. But anyone willing to help, it would be greatly appreciated. The count helps with state funding and other things, and so it's really an important thing. But anyone willing to help would need to attend a training at the Foothill Church, and that's on 2475 Foothill Boulevard. 2 times are available, but it's only one day, and that's March 26th at 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. And then the training itself, the survey itself is on March 28th. So I'm going to be helping with that, and I think it's a really worthy cause. If you're interested in helping out with your community, I would encourage you to check that out. And I've really enjoyed serving on the Continuum of Care Council for the last 2 years, as well as the Housing Loan Advisory Committee and 4 or 5 other committees I was on. And I've also enjoyed the Arts Commission and the short time I've been on it. And so I've been released from several committees, I see. So what is it that I'm on now? I lost count with all the changes.
Councilmember Draper, it looks like you are not currently on any committees.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, not to repeat what Councilwoman Draper said about Continuum of Care, but just to kind of follow up with the going-ons yesterday at the Continuum of Care when they allocated a little over $4 million to the various projects that were identified as HEAP projects. And do a little bit of history. Last year, the previous council voted to get Oroville out in front and declare a shelter crisis so that the city of Oroville would be in line to receive this funding to address an issue that we've all come well too familiar with, which is the homeless and all the subsequent fallout to our community that results from that. There were 2 nonprofit organizations that came to the table that applied for the funding. See, the HEAP monies and the shelter crisis that the city of Oroville declared then goes through that county process of the continuum of care. That agency or group or council then decides how that money was spent, because after Oroville made the declaration, then the county got on board, Chico got on board, everybody kind of got on board. And so now this money is in their jurisdiction, a little over $4 million. So back to Oroville's agencies, nonprofits, 2, the Oroville Rescue Mission, Mr. Steve Terry, and then Hope of Haven, Pastor Kevin Thompson. Both had grants that they wrote and proposed to provide a low barrier shelter. Why is that so important? I mean, even tonight we heard various folks come and express frustration with some of the issues concerning that constituency within our community. This would have, if we had the funding from Continuum of Care through the HEAP process, and the grants were awarded, which they were not, were awarded to the Rescue Mission and or to Pastor Kevin Thompson and the Hope of Haven ministry, then that would have opened the avenue for Oroville to have a low barrier shelter. This would have then provided tools for law enforcement when they have an engagement, an encounter with an individual, and perhaps the situation is such that they have to make a decision. You either go to a shelter, I take you there, or I take you to jail. And oftentimes there are those types of encounters. That's a law enforcement issue. I don't even begin to understand all those dynamics, but it happens frequently. Unfortunately, they decided to fund basically all the organizations except for Mr. Reed's deal, which with the 214 projects here. So all the funding went to basically Chico, so that we have no low barrier shelters funded here in Oroville after the great effort. I must applaud the previous council in stepping out and doing that. And unfortunately, we were not rewarded for being out in front. That all being said, I do want to make it publicly known that Continuum of Care's funding is Butte County funding. So the shelters, and I've already been in discussion with one of the board members in one of the shelters up in Chico, then there may be some responsibility, if you will, that when we have an encounter here and we need a low barrier shelter for someone in Oroville, I am in the process of doing that research to see if then we cannot then transport those folks, since the money went up there, that then we can legitimately, right, transport folks in that situation. It won't be every day, but in those situations, then we would have that available to us here in Oroville. And so, don't faint, don't give up, don't lose. As I was sharing with Pastor Steve Terry, I said, don't throw in the towel, don't quit. Let's just keep on chugging along here. We got a long road in front of us. And same thing with Pastor Kevin Thompson. I applaud him and all his efforts to reach out to this part of our community. And this is a real issue. It's a very serious issue. It's serious for law enforcement. It's serious for businesses. All of us are being impacted daily by this. And so we're not going to quit. We're not going to give up. But that's the current report. That's the current status. That's where we are. And thank you for a little extra time here for me to speak to this.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Hatley?
Yes, thank you. Last weekend, I ran into a friend of mine who works for another county, and for the ag department. And the federal government just took hemp off the Schedule 1 thing for them. So it's now not against federal law to grow hemp. And of course, state law doesn't prohibit it. And it's up to the county ag commissioner who will issue permits. And they're required to issue permits. The problem with this is If you look at the plant, the hemp plant and a cannabis plant, you cannot tell the difference. What they're showing, what they can get a permit to do. You cannot tell the difference. The difference in them is the THC value. And the THC value of the hemp can only be 0.3%, 0.3%. However, where this is going to cause a problem for law enforcement is you take the two plants, you look at them, tell me which one is which. Well, you can't do it. You're going to have to test it. There's nothing, they haven't put anything forward according to this friend of mine who works at the ag in, I think it's Sutter County. I never can. You're either in Yuba City and you're, anyway. But anyway, so what I was wondering is maybe we should, if we could possibly get the Butte County Ag Commissioner to maybe come and talk to us, or somebody come and talk to us about this, because what you will get is 2,500 plants per acre. And if you Google it, it says that you'll yield about $60,000 an acre money off of that. So it would be profitable. Now, I know that we have an ordinance that says it can't be outside grown, marijuana can't, or cannabis. However, you can't tell me the stuff doesn't smell the same, and it's going to be the same. So do we need to do something, and I'm kind of looking at our attorney, do we need in our ordinance that says, and I realize it's an agricultural thing and we may not have a lot of ag land, but if you get somebody who has a permit from this county that says, hey, I have an ag permit to do this, I just want to know where we stand and what we have to do, or is there anything we can do as far as how we're gonna control that? Because if it's
looks the same,
I just need information as what, and I figured that I didn't know if the rest of the council knew about it yet or not, but he just happened to be telling me about it and last weekend, and he said you might want to ask your ag commissioner here in this county to maybe put on a slideshow. He had one on his phone, and I looked at it, and really and truly, you could not tell the difference in the plants. You just couldn't. So I don't know what kind of testing or how they're going to end up doing that, but they're after the oils and stuff of it for medicinal purposes is what they're doing it. So, and so if that's agreeable with everybody, if somebody could contact our county ag commissioner and have him at least give us what they have on it.
Yes, sir. I'll contact them, and I'll see if I can get them for the second meeting in April for a presentation, if that's acceptable.
Is that on 420?
No.
It's 418 actually, or
okay. I just had to check.
416, I believe. Close.
Councilmember Goodson, please.
So I'm still processing what you said, Art. So would this be a potential agenda item for a potential industry in the city, or who knows where that might go? All right. So I attended a statewide California opiate safety network of coalitions in Sacramento last week. There were representatives from all California counties, including Butte and Glenn, which was the reason why I went, because this is home. And the opiate addiction rate is on the increase in California, but Butte County ranks in the top 3 California counties for opiate drug-induced deaths. We are third. In 2017, 76% of all opiate deaths in Butte County were due to prescription overdose. It was stated that the best way to combat, and we had a network of exchange with these various counties, and it wasn't just the opiate addiction that was discussed. And we were trying to figure out the best way to combat both the opiate, heroin, and methamphetamine use, and through early intervention and education in the school system. So this coalition, it meets every month at Inlow, this component of Butte and Glenn County, they collaborate and they meet every month at Inlow Hospital. And so I plan on attending these meetings, and I will be bringing back new updates to the council and to our citizens. Andrew Miller, who is an MD, and he is a Butte County Health Officer, he made this statement, and I quote, "The opiate crisis we are targeting is a community-wide problem that needs a community-wide effort." And with that being said, it is my hope that at our goals and objectives meeting, that is to be, the workshop is scheduled on March 28th, that the city can find a way to partner with the county in regards to how best to serve our communities and the city at large in order to mitigate not just the opiate use, not just the heroin, but the methamphetamine problem in our city as well. And I was hoping that Shannon would have stayed here, and members of the Elijah House, thank you, you're still in the audience. But it's everywhere. I mean, Kelly Ridge, Southside, downtown businesses, they're being affected. And we are cleaning up the riverbeds, the parks, etc., but it's not making the problem go away. It's like a revolving door, and I'm sure that we are all aware of the definition of insanity. We cannot continue to keep doing the same thing and expect different results. And I'm going to end by paraphrasing a quote from an article about the crime in Butte County. Local law enforcement in Butte County estimates that 80% of crime is related to meth use. 80%. So if we want to fight the crime in Oroville and in Butte County, then it makes good sense to fight the meth.
Yeah, I agree.
Vice Mayor Thompson.
Sorry, I would propose that if somebody's planting a hemp farm, we may make an ordinance. They also start a honeybee factory farm, because those that know, hemp neutralizes the THC in marijuana. So yeah, if somebody's starting growing hemp, we could also maybe ask them to start a honeybee farm as well. The reason we actually asked to speak was regarding the railing, Chief LeGrone, you're talking about around the runabout. Is it possible, just while they're doing the bid on Table Mountain, that the gentlemen who are looking at just at least give an idea of what we could do with the roundabout? Because I know much of the fencing there is currently damaged. It'd be nice to possibly do something that was matching.
Mm-hmm. What we'll do is we'll ask them to give us a price per foot. And then if they can give us a price per foot, we'll extrapolate that out. And if we decide to go that path, the council does, then we will go back and get an exact number.
Yeah, just while if they're doing it, they might as well look into the whole thing and have a matching, that it's barrier, it's long-term, it's protected, it's cheap to repair. So that's the main comment. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I just second that. You must have been reading my mind. Thank you.
Moving on to future agenda items. Anyone?
Well, I had
Councilmember Goodson
just mentioned something in regards to what Art had mentioned about hemp, and my first the first thought that came to mind was rope manufacturing. So that was my thought, and I hope that we can have that as an agenda item. I just need more information. And sales, yes. It's 5 items. Oh my goodness. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to administration reports. Ruth?
I would like to let the council know that next Tuesday I've been invited to a CalPERS stakeholders meeting. So I'll be down there all day, if that's okay. It's at the CalPERS building.
Nice.
That it, Ruth?
Yeah, that was
Thank you.
I'll just update the council on my activities. On Saturday, I attended the Arbor Day event downtown that was put on by our Parks and Trees Department, Feather River Parks, and U.S. Forest Service. I seen Council Person Draper down there and Mayor Reynolds. They did a very good event. Wade and his crew, they always do a great job. I wish it was better attended. I also ran into Marlene Del Rosario down there. It was a nice event. Saturday night, I attended the Exchange Club's Search for Talent. They had 12 very talented young people down there. The North Valley Quartet was the overall winner in the senior division. Very talented group of individuals that play all string instruments. It was a great event. The Rosewood subdivision, if anybody asks you, out on Mono Avenue is going to be a FEMA housing site. They're going to be putting trailers in there. It's a subdivision that was never completed. It's not ready to be built out. They got it so far along and then they kind of just stopped. So FEMA has been working with the property owner, with Thermalito Water and Sewer District to get everything in there that's necessary to do. They've submitted a plan to us. It has, I believe, 80 trailers or MHUs that are going to be going in there. You should be seeing that. So if anybody asks what that big swatch of land is out there that they're clearing.
Where's that?
It's off of Mono Avenue, which is off of Table Mountain Boulevard. It's between Table Mountain and the old county hospital on the right-hand side. It was started many years ago and it never was completed, so it's not ready to be built out. It's different than some of the other subdivisions that are actually ready for the homes to go in. The only other thing I have to report back to the council is that Mr. Christensen dropped off a letter last week that has been delivered to all of the council people. One of the issues that Mr. Christensen outlined in the letter was some information that I provided to the council several council meetings ago regarding the utility user tax. I misspoke. I said that it generates $3.6 million. It actually generates $1.8 million. So I just want to publicly correct that misspeaking. It was a mistake. The written word was accurate. The spoken word that I delivered that night was inaccurate. So I apologize for that. The other issue that we had talked about, Mr. Christensen and I, was the reluctance of staff to correct when these issues happen. I would encourage all of our staff, when we misspeak or we make a mistake, just please point it out in a gentle way. Gentle with our council, not so gentle with myself. That's fine. But anyway, I think it's just important that we do that as we move forward. So that's all I have.
So another correction. I have two items, but another correction. It probably was misstated, but we got FEMA money that was a reimbursement for staff expenses, and it went into the general fund. It did not go into the pension reserve, and there were 4 or 5 items that were put together, and if you listen to it, I can see where that came from, but wanted to clarify that. And then I attend every week the coordinating committee of the long-term recovery group, and want to echo what Councilmember Pittman said. They're talking about years to get this done. Today we met with about 30 state and federal agencies that are involved in this, and they're very enthusiastic. They want to be very helpful, but their helpfulness comes with 48-month time frame really to get things going. It's kind of depressing for our economy because we need housing now, and not temporary housing. We need housing that people want to live in on a long-term basis. So I have a copy of the state and federal points of contact that I'll put in your boxes. Every week I attend these meetings. It's usually just the managers and OES and FEMA. This time they brought in all the state and federal agencies.
Thank you. Mr. Huber? Nothing. Is that it? This meeting's adjourned. April 2nd. We'll reconvene April 2nd, 5:30 for closed session.